welcome. And Lois, there you are, thank you. I also see Betsy Levinson is also on the line. If folks don't know Betsy the way I do from 20 years ago, Betsy is the new reporter for the Concord Bridge newspaper. So Betsy, welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So welcome to the Concord Finance Committee meeting tonight. It's October 27th, 2022. And we'll do a quick roll call for attendance. So I'm just going to go around and everybody can, Peggy Briggs.
Chris Reynolds.
John Garofalo.
Lindsay Liss.
Don Kupka.
Dee Ortner.
Online we have Ray. Lois. Ray Andrews. Lois Wassoff. Amherst Mar. So I declare we have a quorum and the meeting is open. Call to order.
It's being live streamed in case folks don't know.
And it will be, this meeting is being recorded.
And live streamed.
Pardon me?
It's real time. It's real time, okay.
Yeah, it's real time. It's what do we call it when it's a combo meeting?
Hybrid.
Hybrid,
Hybrid.
yes, thank you. It's a hybrid meeting and it is being recorded. Okay, so thank you. Another member. And I am, we have.
We need someone to take minutes, Peggy.
Thank you. We need a volunteer to take minutes. Amherst, you did it last time.
2 times.
Is the clerk. So guess what, Ray? You're on. You accept?
I accept. How soon will I be able to watch the video to fill in the gaps?
Say that again.
How soon will I be able to watch the video to fill in the gaps?
Ray, I'll send it to you tonight.
Yes, you may. Absolutely. And I think that's particularly useful if when you're engaged in the discussion, you don't have to be taking notes of yourself.
Okay.
Yes, you'll be able to watch it recorded. Thank you, Ray, and welcome back from your travels.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Okay, the first item on our agenda is the fiscal 2024 guidelines, and for that, I'm going to be turning it right over to Parashar.
Yep. So I think this is going to be very brief. We've reviewed the guidelines. We set preliminary guidelines last time. There's no updates because we gave the school and the schools in the town 3 to 4 weeks to go take our input as they continue to develop the budget.
It might just be worth repeating those for.
Repeating the actual numbers. I can do that. Let me just pull that up. And then I think, Chris, you wanted to get a sense of what the potential impact would be, right? And I don't. Is Gail here on the phone? She's
Gail's
on the phone,
online.
yep.
Yeah.
Gail, I don't know if you were able to develop the model or update the model that we had requested.
Parashar, I have that from Carrie.
Okay, so why don't you bring that up? But in the meantime, I will remind everybody that the approach that we had considered was basically set an overall guideline number at 3% for all 3 units. That resulted in a pool of $102.7 million. The second step was to increase the town's guideline amount to 4%, which basically resulted in a pool of $33 million. The third step was to set the combined schools increase to 2.5%, which resulted in a pool of $69.7 million that was distributed to CPS, the regional school district based on the current estimate of their fiscal year 24 spend, which resulted in an increase of 2.52% for CPS, or 1.1 million, and 2.46%, or $600,000 for the regional school district. So the weighted average result of all those computations turned out to be 2.98%, just because of the way we took the approach of fixing the school numbers. So there you have it, and I'm happy to.
Can you say again the split between CPS and CCRSD, the percent and the dollars per
Yep,
chart?
so an increase for CPS was 2.52%,
Yeah,
which is $1.1 million.
okay,
And for the regional school district, it's 2.46% with $600,000.
600K, okay, thank you.
Bob, if you can forward this email sent around from last October to everybody on the finance committee, that would be helpful. Thank you. And just please note that I made a typo originally in the town increase. It's actually 4%, not 5% in the email.
Parashar, I'm not sure what email, and if someone would let me share the screen for what Carrie has provided, I'm happy to do that.
I'll send the email around after this.
Can you copy
Okay,
the?
will
on
do
the-
then.
Whoever they sent to the, yeah, that-
I could also just send what Carrie has provided to members after the meeting also, if that's easier.
And have we heard, Parashar, have we gotten any kind of response or?
No, it's been 2 weeks. I haven't poked the bear. Let them
busy.
go off and do. They're busy doing stuff.
No, they're busy.
They know what they have to do. I trust them, and they'll come back to us.
I just want to raise a
Yes,
question
please.
about the process. I understand the process, I agree with the process. It's more about the timing. Is there some way that we could look at how can we postpone asking for their original information or their first cut at information further back in the year so that they have more information? Thank you. That we have more information based on, to do our estimations, our original estimations, and that they are in a better position as they get to the second part, so our decision-making, is it possible that we can postpone this a month?
So we can, I think, for the future. Bylaw, is it a bylaw? Is it we've got to set the preliminary guidelines by December 1st.
no, final guidelines for
Final,
November
sorry,
30th,
final,
right? So it's
November
tied
30th.
to when the warrant, it's tied to the warrant. That's the way it works right now. So we're tied into that. So it's hard to get it later.
So we
So the
would
latest
have-
we can do something is by
And
November
Chris,
30th,
My
yeah.
understanding is, that's not the state law.
No,
It's
that's
a-
this,
It's
it's
a,
Concord.
it's a
Concord.
local bylaw that the select board
No,
put. in place
Sorry,
last-
it's not a bylaw, it's
We did.
convention in town.
Sorry, Emirath?
It is not a bylaw, it is convention in the town. I got, in response to the email that I forwarded to the moderator, I got a lengthy response which explained the history. It is the custom in town that we will do that, and it was probably not a good idea to change that custom because what it will impact is how soon people can have the public hearings and how soon we can have the report out to the town. So while I understand why we want to delay it, so people may have more information, it is going to be upending I think the number was a 40-year tradition in town, which is probably not a good idea.
It's just something that.
We asked the town to vote on it. So we went to the town and asked them, told them what we wanted. So we'd asked the town to vote on that in terms of the timing of when
When did we ask the town to do that?
2 years ago, you were here.
We asked the town to
You did,
change
it
it?
was at town meeting, yeah.
Yeah.
We had a warrant item. Because remember, it used to be tied to, it was before, it was tied to a different date.
Right.
So we said, we want to adjust it, so we went and asked for it. So we had them vote on it.
It just seems as though our process is not, the way it should be. It seems as though we're asking for information when they're still closing out books from the year before. They don't even have their numbers. And,
Yeah.
it just seems as though.
It is, but it's a
the
function of
timing
town
is-
meeting and the warrant, right? So you have to shift a lot of things, Dee, to
Sure.
make it work better, I think.
So.
Yeah.
So I guess, let
Isn't
me
it
just,
something
so,
to-
so here's my suggestion. Can I make a suggestion, Dee? I agree with what you're saying, but given that there's a whole number of other downstream
Moving
effects,
parts, yeah.
I would suggest you talk to the moderator and see what would have to happen to the rest of the calendar to make that happen.
I will do
And then
that.
maybe come back to the guidelines
I will
committee
do
and we
that.
can
Because
see
I
where it goes
just,
from here.
I hate to see all the effort that we put in, but more so the town and the
Yep.
school when they really don't have
Yep.
the information available.
Completely agree. So
I
if you
will-
can go to the moderator
I
and come
have a
up with a
little
proposed set
star
of dates, that would be
here. I'm
great.
gonna talk to the moderator.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, well, the moderator's gonna say then you're gonna have town meeting in June.
Well,
Let them
you know,
figure that
the
out.
kids are still in
Oh,
school.
this has been kicking around for back and forth for
I'll
many,
just
many years.
talk with
Talk to
moderator.
the moderator. If
and-
you come up with a different schedule calendar, I'm
Yeah.
happy to entertain it. I'm sure others would.
It's always, with the June fiscal year, there's always a little bit of cart and horse situation.
Okay, so,
So, okay,
Bob, are we ready to see the screen in terms of the model?
you're on mute.
I'm happy to, but I'm not allowed to share the screen. If someone would change that, the host.
Chris, is Chris here?
Someone please promote Bob to the, promote Bob so
Oh,
we can.
there we go.
Okay,
Let's see.
promote it around here.
Can everyone see that, or is it too small?
A little small. Better,
Here?
okay. And so there's our, in column L, row 21 is our 2.98%, right?
Correct, right here.
Right, Parashar, right there,
Sorry?
2.98.
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. And that on the median household valuation of 900, basically 971,000, is going to result in a tax increase of
I think that's right here, 3.18.
3%.
And we're using a little bit of levy capacity for it. A little bit of that levy
Chris,
Could you speak into the microphone? You're not being.
I'm looking at the screen. Bob, do you know where we were last year on levy capacity? Were we over 4?
Honestly, I don't remember, Chris. I'd have to look. I could do that.
Didn't we have 2 million somehow additional?
Would we not have been at 4.8? Because that says unused levy capacity consumed is 0 in column G.
I don't know. It could be. I can't
Is it?
remember how it works. I'd have to look at it from
Yeah,
last
I
year's
don't either.
schedule.
Bob, can you just scroll up for a minute, please?
Yeah, there's nothing.
No, I understand. I just want to make sure we're using the same numbers before you send that out.
Yeah, you have to actually look at, there's a calculation, right, that shows what the prior number was, plus a percentage of growth. There's a calculation that goes behind this. And I think it shows you what the unused levy capacity is, and under 2.5, it sort of shows you how much room you have. So,
Chris, is it in the italic note at the top of this?
Yeah, right here.
That's today.
yeah, that's it. That must be it. Okay, so we could have done 3.3, and we're doing 3 million? Well, there it is on the right. So there's the 2 million 3 plus the new growth. So that 3.3 million.
Yep.
Okay. So we're assuming that for the revenue number. Do we have an assumption on the $1 million from free cash? Is that in the model yet or no?
I don't believe it is.
Okay. So I think sometimes when we do it, so remember, we usually assume there's $1 million in free cash to
Yeah.
offset that. So we could actually be under, the 3.18, depending on how that comes out. So this model, Parashar, you and I should probably go through it in a little bit more detail maybe and bring it back to the committee so they understand how it works or whatever. But that's kind of the model that we use to really figure out in the end where we're going. That was one of my other questions. So if we have to vote on final at November 30th, so we have one more meeting, one more guideline?
We're going
What-
to talk about that.
Okay. Okay, that's my other question is when do we, when do we show this again and how do
Well,
we do it?
we'll have to show it when we do the final
Yeah.
guidelines, just so people
Right.
can see the impact.
Right, so I want to make sure people understand it, I
Yep.
guess, yeah. Okay.
So the two of you are going to update this and then send it out? Or just review it and then send it out?
I will make sure the numbers are correct, and then we will send it out.
Okay,
In the meantime, Chris and I can look at it
Yeah, we'll
offline.
take a look at it, just make sure we understand what's
Just
going
want to
on.
make sure there's
Okay.
one
So
clean
like
version
is the
being
million in or
circulated.
out and what does,
yeah.
Right, but we don't want to send it out with all of those rows. We just want to show
we
the
can come up with
operable row,
something
which is
somewhere.
row 37.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, yeah, exactly. Well, we can hide,
Yeah, you can hide, yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. You can highlight the one that
Yeah.
matters, yeah.
But currently, the 2.98% guideline recommendation that we have made would result in a 3.18% increase to the tax base.
Correct. Right.
But we are waiting to hear from the town.
3,
3.9.
No, 2.98 is the guideline, 3.18 is the tax
so
increase.
they're very close, yeah, yeah.
And we will be waiting to hear from the schools, the region, and the town.
Now, the timing of that, though, is after we vote the guideline, right, Parashar?
I think we
The
already
timing of
voted the
what?
guideline.
But we voted the preliminary
Voted the
No, I
guideline
know we did,
Guideline
but in
already.
terms of, we vote the final sometime,
after they come back.
technically you have to vote the final by November 30th,
No, I
right?
understand, but
Yeah, yeah.
they're coming back to us in a month.
When?
The 27th?
27th? Okay, that's what I was trying to figure
They're
out.
gonna come back to us
Before we have to vote.
before we
Okay,
vote.
Okay,
They're gonna have presumably updated numbers.
okay.
They're number crunching, they have our input. They'll come back and then we can vote on the final.
27th is Thanksgiving, so that can't be the right date, right?
Oh,
So-
we're having turkey next week.
21st.
Whatever the date is, sometime in November, they're
I've
coming
got,
back.
I've got November 1st, Monday, November 1st is the guideline
would be
meeting,
next
if
year.
needed,
That's
vote
next
final
week.
guideline.
Next week, so that before they come back, right? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
It's November 17th and then the 21st, which is a Monday before Thanksgiving if needed. And I think it will be needed because you have other business to take up. So you'll be meeting both the 17th and the 21st.
Right, we do
And
have,
November 17th,
that's our meeting, our regular meeting.
November 17th will be all of the above, a public hearing for the middle school building project and the warrant for the
And
special
the
town
guidelines
meeting.
meeting.
There will also be a guideline meeting and also a regular meeting.
Right.
So,
Bring your sleeping bags.
I was just gonna say, bring your sleeping bag.
well, we're gonna talk about November 3rd because that one's, we have a November 3rd meeting, which is on our schedule, but I think it might be a relic from
It's a public
the
hearing.
earlier town meeting schedule. and
No, it's not. It was something we talked about in terms of having the building committee come back before we had the hearing. So may not work, I don't know.
Maybe we may not need it.
We
I
may
mean,
not
you
need it.
know.
It's up to the
We'll
committee if they
discuss
want
that.
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's-
right.
okay.
That's what it was for.
Okay,
So are we completed with the guideline piece of the discussion here?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, I know, because I can't
Is
see
he
those
logged
numbers
in?
on here.
Smart, he brings his own computer
I
and
can't
logs
see
in.
that print from here.
How do we know there aren't two Parashars?
This is true. You've never seen both at the same time, have you?
Ooh.
There's only one.
Hi, Suresh,
Oh.
welcome. Okay,
Eric's here too now.
okay, so are we done with the guideline? Don't really have any update This chair update since.
Yeah, there's no update.
Okay, that's you. Okay, the next item, thank you, Parashar. Next item on our agenda is an update on the middle school building project. I think we all remember that we had a couple folks from the middle school here last time. It was, we also had the guidelines discussion, but also discussed the middle school. We are now in receipt of the new budget for the 60% design that came to us, or came to them on October 20th, last week. That number came in, the operative number that we're using right now is 108,700,000. Now, that is, so there's been, what? Okay, well, which I would welcome in just one second. So we started with 102,816, that million, that was, or thousand, that was voted at town meeting last year. And that was a 25-year term, 3.75 interest rate. Bob, can you put this little spreadsheet up, this little one that we worked on? Matt, you have a new number.
Yeah, I just got it. I'm trying to get on.
Okay, well, the number Bob and I worked with today was 108,700. Now that is subsequent to the estimate, the design development estimate that we got in June, subsequent to the value engineering that took place, which reduced the cost, the June cost by about 2 million. And the 60% design came in, give or take, another 2 million up. So not to get overly detailed about it, but we pretty much ate back up the value engineering in the 60% bid, Don.
See, I just want to be clear. You mentioned first the 60% budget, and now is it a budget or is it an cost estimate?
Estimate.
It's so we're in receipt of a 60% design cost estimate.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
And now, when they received that estimate, they had the designers go back again to the value engineering spreadsheet, if you will, and look at the items that they had previously rejected to see if there's anything that they could, they would value engineer again. Chris, you have been attending the
Yeah,
meetings.
so
They had
this
one
morning,
this
yeah,
morning.
and they
yes.
did that, they reviewed that as a committee this morning, and they came up with about another 350,000, so out of that rejected list.
Okay.
So now the number, including everything, is 108.3. So it was 108.8 at the October 27, 60%, that was kind of the 60% estimate, so they brought it down a bit since
Okay.
then. So we're about 5.5 million above where the budget was in January of 20.
What the town meeting voted on.
102.8, right? So you're 5.5 million above.
So what I asked Bob to do, and you can see this spreadsheet, is to try and do something really simplistic. We're using 108.7, so these numbers will be a smidge better, if we're using 108.3. What we're trying to do here in this spreadsheet is show apples to apples. The 102.816 was approved at town meeting, and that was the tax impact at the time. The new number is, I'm just going to call it 108.7, although it's a smidge lower, using the same terms, 25 years and the 3.75% interest rate. You can see that number is, that increase, from town meeting to what we're talking now would, and I'm just going to talk about fiscal 25, would increase the tax per median household about $70, $70 or so, less than 70 per year. Then apples to apples on the next line, we're increasing the assumed interest rate to 5% because of conditions, which everyone's aware of. And now the new annual median household assessed value impact would be up, doing math in my head, about $225 per year on that average household. So that's, and of course, it'll be a smidge lower, but that's, sort of an apples to apples comparison. It's going to change over the course of the loan, of course. But if we just look at the first year of the fiscal 25, now this does not assume any input from the stabilization fund.
It also doesn't assume any more contingency, right, Peggy?
It assumes the 1087.
Right. So they're not going to go for 1087, right? They're going to go higher. So
Well,
it might
they're-
not be the 115, but it'll be some number, right?
It's going to be up to the Board of Selectmen to put the warrant article together, and they're doing that at their meeting tomorrow at noon.
Does the 1087 include the same contingencies that were in the 1028?
Yes, it does. It includes both the design contingency and the $2 million bid contingency. Yes.
It's interesting to me that the change in principle is about $6 million,
Correct.
which is 6%. But when you look at the change in fiscal year 25, that's a 20% higher expected increase on the tax bill.
Between which ones? The 1128 and
Between
1357?
1128 and
Yeah.
Oh, the
1357.
interest rate is changing.
Look, I think you'll
understand- I
notice that
understand
the
that, but-
interest rate drives
Yeah.
that more. Yeah,
But still, it's a 20% difference.
it is.
It is.
It's not,
And that-
it's not nothing.
No, it's not. And so there'll be a range, right? So 1087 is their number of what they think with their, I'll call their
Best
their
guess.
standard,
Current
it's not their
estimate.
best guess. It's their kind of their standard percentage for contingency, but they're going to figure out what they're worried, right? Between now and when the bids actually come in, could it be more than that, right? So they're going to add something to that number. That's how they come up with the 115. So I don't know what the number will be. It could be 112. I don't sure. They're going to work on that. So the warrant will go in at the 115. So in the discussions with the taxpayers, I don't think we can just talk about 1087. You can do it as a range. You could say, if we hit that number,
Yep.
it's 14, wait, it was 1400, but you have to show them the other side too. If we hit the 115,
I'm objecting to the impact. I
Mhm.
just think it's outrageous. If they, well, if we were able to get the same interest rate, then yeah,
mhm.
but facts have changed. And that has to be a reality for the town and the people who are trying to build the school. We just can't keep, trying to, put more tax burdens on people.
That was a lot of the discussion we had last week too,
Yeah.
Kathy, yeah. We
Yeah.
did. We had
For
a
sure.
discussion about it. Yeah. Okay.
But this, again, is just trying to keep something pretty simple,
Yep.
pretty apples to apples.
Right, and it doesn't reflect the stabilization, which we have some. We don't
We
have
have
all of it.
some
We have
stabilization
yeah.
funds. As you said, Christine, we haven't discussed free cash,
Mhm.
for this year. We haven't discussed things that, money that might be rescinded, from other projects that, might release some funds. So, I think we were very frugal with our guidelines at 3%.
Well, particularly when we have this coming, right? So
Yeah,
this is the
exactly.
other hit, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So any,
Yeah, so let me see if there's anything else. So,
other
yeah, we
questions
talked
on
about,
this?
yeah, we talked about that. So as I said last week, they did good work today. The challenge is that they've constrained themselves very much to smaller type items, right? So that's the challenge. To really chop off the 5 million, you need to do something on the building size, which would be a bigger change, which they have opted not to do. So it's hard to get any further, I think, with these smaller type items and sort of where they are.
okay, so I think the impression I got was that they, based on our discussion on the 3rd, and Parashar, your specific request for the 3 alternatives, to get back to the 103 million that was approved, in the most simplistic terms, they would remove the gym and the auditorium.
We don't know that, because
No, we don't know.
what the effect is, and.
Well, I do. It's only about, that's like 2 million, right? It doesn't get them to the 5, right?
When you say 2 million, it's the question, is that based on the 60% or from the numbers from last year?
No, it's based on more recent data. I
Okay.
don't know that they had, well, they're probably using a square footage number, right? So we're at 606 a square foot now. It's directionally correct, I think. So
Okay.
they have it on their,
Okay,
they had it on their VE list this fall, so it's a fairly recent number.
okay, that's good.
So I think, so anyway, that doesn't get you all the way there. You'd
Okay,
have to do
okay,
some more.
that's what
yeah.
they said at our last meeting.
Yeah,
so-
at least, I'm sure those would be
Yeah,
two of
yeah.
the elements they could do it. But I asked this morning, Peggy, in the
Yeah,
meeting,
okay,
I asked them that question, because after the discussion we had, since there isn't going to be an option, there's going to be one number in the warrant. So they have said, and they said again today, that in their materials, so they're going to have communications with town folks, they're going to come to our hearing with some materials as well, that in there, they will give you, they said, here's what it looks like, pardon me, if we were to get to the 102.8. I haven't seen that. I'd like to see that. I think
Oh, you
that's
mean
what
they're
you're
gonna
asking.
have like a schematic or something that will show?
I don't think there'll be a schematic. I think there'll be a
Just a
number
verbal-
that kind of reconciles down to it.
Okay, okay.
I'm sorry.
That's true.
You said that if it was, they were to get out $5 million.
I'm sorry, but could you speak into the microphone?
If they were to cut the project by 5 million,
Yeah.
they wouldn't build the auditorium, is that what you said?
No, they would bring it back to the original design. So remember, the town lobbied to have a larger auditorium and a larger gym. They would go back to the original design.
Plus, they'd have to
Sounds like a
make-
plan.
Plus, they'd have to make some other changes.
It would be, yeah, you'd have to
That's
do
what I'm
more
saying.
than that, because that's about $2 million, I think. I have to go back and look at the schedule.
Okay, so they will come back with those.
Well, it's
I
not,
believe they have
maybe.
to. I haven't seen it, but
it's
I
not
believe they've said
clear.
that.
And
Yeah.
one of the things I'm going to do as a private citizen after today's meeting is, I'm just looking for a simple 2x3 table. The first column is the original design, and what would that cost, given today's updated numbers at 60%? The middle
Which we
column,
have,
well,
right
we
here.
don't have. That's,
Oh, no, we have that, the 1087.
the 108 is not the original design.
Right.
The original, because that's a value engineered
Valued
number.
engineered, correct.
The second column would be the 108.3, because they made changes today. And very simple description of some of the major material changes that were made to the original design. And then the third column would simply be, what are the design changes you'd need to scale back to the 2021 estimate? In other words, a 102.8. And 5 or 7 major elements to give people a qualitative sense of what that would look like. And that would then, and they can recommend the middle one. That's up to them what to recommend.
Yep.
But at least it gives voters and residents some choices. And if folks want to say, we'll pay the extra 10 million for the original design, they can do that. But they would know what the cost is at today's
Yeah,
estimates.
okay, so just the June 2022 design development estimate without any value engineering.
Yep, how much was that?
108415.
But there was no design development set in June. So how was there a design development
The
Cost estimate.
Design development estimate
estimate.
projection.
We're not gonna do it here.
No, we can't do it here.
We
but-
we should just
Yeah.
ask them. It's
Yeah.
a
So
very
what I,
simple
what
set
the
of.
Based on
point, the point
schematic.
being is very similar. As I said, then they valued engineered down to 106,645. Then they got the estimate based on 60% design, which was 2 million higher, and pretty much ate up the value engineering. So we haven't moved really since June. We moved down, we moved back up.
I was just kind of, I'm curious.
Yes.
I'm
speak up
curious,
into the microphone.
Partosh, if Parashar, I'm sorry. If they went back to the original design and said, this is what would be at the original design, they'd have to have a current cost estimate associated with that original design.
Right.
So we would then know if it's still 102, or if it's now 106, or if it's
Right.
now
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly.
So that's, okay, I just wanted to make sure you were including that.
Yeah, that's,
Okay, but we have that. In June, the design development estimate projection was 108,415. Now, we can add the 2 million to that, and now we're 110,415. That would be the original design without the value engineering and the new estimate. So it's a plus 2 million
As of today.
as of today. But because they valued engineered about 2 million out of that, we're kind of at the same number. We're a little bit treading water. So
Okay, so, okay,
trying to keep it
Yeah.
simple for the audience.
yeah, no, yeah,
Not for you. You-
right.
You don't need simple.
Don't, I can handle complexity. So on the other questions, so we have the building isn't adjusted in size, and so we have you have the smaller
Right.
difference, but I assume that in their analysis or the materials that they produce, they'll have something that gets them down to the 102.8.
Yep.
The other question is on the contingency. So we talked about how
Yes.
they're at the 108.3, and the question is, where do we want to put the number at? Because there's a concern that if they have more escalation,
Thank you.
if they have more escalation, how do they get there? So there was some discussion on that today, but I think that's an important discussion for us, right? Because we need to look at that. So the last time they went to the town meeting, the estimate on contingency was way under, which is why we're 5 million here, right? So that's not easy to predict, right? So I'm not,
Right.
it was, they were in a period of a lot of
And are
different
you
things. But
talking
now
about the
time has
design
passed.
contingency or the bid contingency?
The stuff that's not the bid, not the
Okay,
stuff that's
not the
built
2
in.
million.
Right, there's 5 million other
Built in.
built in, and there's also a couple million for escalation that's built in the actual construction cost. So the question is sort of how much contingency do you really need in there? What's your projection for inflation, right? They're going to have other issues. They need the contingencies for lots of things, not just inflation, right?
Right.
You're going to have change order, there's things that
Yeah,
happen,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So they need it for that. The bid contingency of 2 million was specific for inflation. So the question is the 2 million enough, or do you need more on top of that? So they had some discussion about that today. The 115, which was kind of the swag that they did a couple of weeks ago, is still going to be in the warrant. They will tighten that when they get the 90%, which should be at
Yes.
some point in January.
About 1 week before the town meeting.
Right, so they'll relook at it again.
Sorry,
Yeah.
they reduce that contingency when they get to the 90% because they're closer to the actual time of starting to build?
I don't, they might, but they might, they could take that argument that says there's less inflation risk, so you could do that. Yeah, you could do that.
Yeah,
Or they might say we wanna-
at that point, they're going to be actually bidding it in
Yeah,
several
Would-
weeks.
Right.
Typically, though, there's a construction contingency and a design contingency.
Yeah,
That's right.
So they're separate lines, and
Yep.
you can
Yes.
bring down that design contingency at 90%.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. Yep, yeah, so, anyway, so that's one of the questions for us, and so one of the things I think we have to sort of figure out, and I posed this to the committee today, and my question at the end was, what is the rationale, right? What is the math here that gets us to a range of what you think the number is, right? So they talked about it a bit. So I'm interested in sort of understanding more about, and this is one of the questions I will have for them, what is the industry, parish arts like we did for the guideline, right? So we used, the Congressional Budget Office information on projections. There are industry groups that have CPI, if you will, for construction and building.
Yeah.
I've looked at some of those. I haven't concluded anything on it, but I think I'd like to bring that back to a discussion with them to say, can you explain to us from where we started to where we're going, which is sometime in April, May of 2023, what inflation really we think is going to look like, and how does that translate into the number, and therefore how does that make us feel about the 115 or the 112, whatever it is. Yeah. So I think contingency is kind of the next thing on our
Is
list.
that something you want them to discuss with us at the
Yes.
next time they come?
Yes, I
So
do.
you're gonna,
Yes.
you'll have to
I raised it
clarify.
today.
Okay.
Yeah, I
you
told
have to
them
be
today
very
that when you.
clear on what it is you're
Well, the
looking
other
for.
question is, are we meeting on the 3rd or not? So at that time, I assumed we were.
We
but I-
certainly can.
Okay. I don't know
Absolutely.
if they're available, because they were talking about that today, Peggy, so they didn't have that on their
conflicts.
calendar.
No, but they can put it on.
Okay, so that's something, if we
The
can,
90% budget is going to come in is due Friday, January 13th, and the town meeting is January 19th.
right, right.
And by the time they get the estimates for 90%, they should be pretty close to bidded numbers, because what the consultants do is they go out and, talk to their bidders, basically, and say, what do you think you'd bid it in at? And we're that close, right? I mean, you do this, Don. So, right, it's the farther we get, the less chance for changing things, and the more accurate the number.
You know,
Both. D.
maybe I misunderstood, but I thought at the last meeting, they said that even after they get the 90%, there is still about a 6-week period of time before they would be getting
There is,
any bid.
Yep.
So we're looking at another 2 months.
there's a couple of months risk
Yeah.
still in there, yep.
Right.
And actually, I think even if the bids come in, let's say in April, there's still a gap of time between when the people actually lock on they say, okay, now you've got it, but they've probably got to go off and do some work and get the subs set up. So there still could be some movement.
Well, there might be time before they actually start, but I think that there would be that commitment that.
Oh, perhaps,
like
yeah.
a 6-week to 2-month interval.
Well, I assume what we see.
That's an assumption.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. Maybe they'll build that in. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I think they're
Okay,
going to build in a couple of months.
so-
If I were them, if I were
I'm
bidding,
gonna go to Eric, who's
Yeah,
had his
yep,
hand up there. But I will just say the general bids are due on April 19th.
Yep.
So, but they can't go to bid until they have a town meeting authorization to spend the money. I mean, they can't bid this out without authorization to spend the money. So, Eric,
Hey, folks, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. I'm traveling right now. I have very limited bandwidth, so I'm going to stay off camera. The question I have, and I think we started to get there in the discussion, is what's the plan if this additional authorization, whatever the amount ultimately turns out to be, what's the plan if it's not approved at town meeting or at the ballot? I think the answer is that they're going to proceed with a project of reduced scope at the originally authorized amount of 102.8 million. But I'd like to get better. I'd like to get confirmation on that and a better understanding of that when they join us. If not on the 3rd, then at the next meeting.
now we started this entire discussion with 2 points of knowledge. That the town approved 102,816 million, 1,000 at last town meeting, and they approved a middle school that included a full-size gym and a full-size auditorium and et cetera, et cetera. So those are only 2 things we know. We know that the town's willing to spend 103 million, but we don't know if they want to spend 103 million on a smaller school. And we don't know if they want to spend 109 million or 108.5 million on the school that they wanted in the first place. So,
But if they voted no, Peggy, so
if they voted, if they
I
vote
assume
no,
they
we're
go
back to the drawing
we're
board.
back to the drawing board. I think that's what he's asking.
So you mean that the size of the size of the rooms was material in the town warrant?
Absolutely.
They can't vary that from the
No,
dimensions.
no, they can. They can.
Well, they can, and they can
They
put,
didn't want, they concluded not to, yeah.
No, but Peggy, you said there were two facts right? One is the size of the auditorium and the gym, and the other is the budget.
well, the size of the whole school, including the auditorium and gym.
Including
But
the bigger
unless they came
I
to
see.
town meeting with a revised plan in a lower budget, I mean, the town meeting is voting on two things: a school and how much it costs. So if they want to come back with a different school at 103, they could do that, but they have decided not to do that.
So
If they want to come
see.
back with pretty much the same school at 108, which they've decided pretty much to do, we're going to wait and see if the town has the appetite for that. Am I right, Matt? Matt, not really. Okay, great. Please come up and correct me. This is Matt Johnson, our select board chair.
So Matt Johnson, Select Board, and also member of the Middle School Building Committee. Speaking for myself, however, I can't speak for either of those bodies tonight. But what I wanted to say was that, first of all, we have 60%, actually now probably more like 75% design for a building, and it's the building with the scope that we see. We also have a schematic design for that other building. We don't have construction documents for that building. So we've crossed the Rubicon. We can't just say, okay, let's just go back to that original scope, smaller gym, whatever. It would require redesign, project delay, and any escalation tied to that project delay. So there really isn't a plan B right now. Now, certainly, if the special town meeting doesn't vote for the additional funds, then we just have to go back, as you said earlier, to the drawing board. But that drawing board within that lower budget will not yield even the original building. It will yield something less than that. So that's something people need to realize. And that's probably why you don't see that alternative plan. Because first of all, it would take detailed design to come up with a viable budget for it. And we don't want to design two schools. We're designing a school. So, you know, at this, the OPM did put on the table when we were at the 60% mark, which is what the architect told us was sort of the point of no return, that here would be what you'd have to cut at that moment to get to the original budget. And there was a way to do it, but that would mean not only getting rid of the gym's extra size and the auditorium extra size, but not building out the playing fields, not also not achieving the net zero ready that, of course, town meeting voted to do. Those things, and then a few others on top of that. So that was not a path chosen. Certainly all those things would have to come off the table and then some if the special town meeting doesn't vote for an increased budget. I also have the numbers here and I can put them up on the screen.
Okay.
This morning, the building committee did take an additional $385,000. And let's just get that displayed.
Lois, I'm going to call on you while Matt's trying to share his screen. Lois.
Thanks. I don't know quite how to put this. What I'm hearing then is that, and I may not be as this may come out a little differently than I wanted to. I apologize in advance. But what I'm starting to hear is that by making the decisions that the middle school building committee made, they took this process down a path where the town basically is in a take it or leave it position. Either absorb the extra however many millions and the extra very substantial hit to your tax liability, or no school, because they haven't pursued the path that would have presented the town with an alternative, which is a somewhat different building at a cost at or much closer to the cost that the town originally authorized. And I just want some clarification if that's in fact what we're hearing now. Because that's how it's coming across to me, and maybe I'm not following.
There is a problem here, which is that the decision timeframe to get the town to vote is by, at a minimum, the time it takes to call and hold a special town meeting. In the interim, we can't just stop time. That the process, the project still needs to proceed. And like I was saying at the outset, it's impossible to design, 2 buildings. And so that was the decision that the committee was faced with. And really, we realized while at the outset, people thought, oh, let's offer options at special town meeting, that it wasn't practical to do so.
So can I just clarify one thing? At least I did not, when I raised the notion of options in July,
Yeah.
I wasn't suggesting you necessarily offer them to vote. My point all along has been, if you want to present one option, if we will, to go forward and vote on it, that's great. But at least give the residents and voters a supplemental document that just shows 2 other potential paths, so that they are fully informed when they're making a decision for whatever
I think
and whatever design that is being put up for a vote.
The best information that we have is at least the maximum that you possibly could get, which would be the original design without playing field build out and without net zero ready.
Look,
That's
all
the
that- all that-
absolute maximum that you could get, but that's all we can know.
Well, again, all that is fine. Everybody has thrown around a number of different options. You could do this, you could do that, and all that. It would be great to have those major elements on a piece of paper and cost attached, cost developed at one single point. in
Yeah, and
time.
I did
So
hear,
we can do
and-
apples to apples. We were told in July that that's something that they would go back and do. And it was reaffirmed, so.
Board of Selectmen.
Sorry, but I'm just, it's frustrating now to
Keep
hear
it
that we
down.
can't go back. That's all, sorry.
Yeah, and I have to say, again, I've been probably the most aggressive member of the committee trying to cut items, through the VE process. But I'm just also saying that as a practical matter, this is where we are.
I have a
Yeah.
question,
I think,
Matt,
before you go, Don, Bob, our little spreadsheet, it might be also worthwhile at some point taking our 102.8 or the 103 that was approved and applying the 5% interest rate to that, because
Yeah.
even if
Even if everything stood still,
if we
the money would
could
have
get
gone way
back
up.
to that budget,
Taxes would have gone
the
up.
impact on taxes would increase, Don.
So I Googled and looked up here, I have a copy of the town warrant article from January.
Yep.
And it's signed by the members of the select board. And there's no mention of the size of the building here. So is there another warrant article? Was there an update to this?
No, again,
Size could be
people keep
altered. They
saying that
decided not
we
to.
voted on a building, not a budget, but actually we voted on a budget, not a building, okay?
So-
We did not vote on a specific building. There
Okay.
was a presentation that showed lots of different things, a schematic design at that time. And
fact-
that's,
The language of it says that that the warrant was to see if the town will vote to approve a sum not to
not to
exceed
exceed.
$103,700,000 to be expended under the direction of the town manager in consultation with the Concord Middle School Building Committee for the construction of a new middle school. And it and it's to include the recreational fields, driveway, and parking lots. So we've clarified, and I'd like to be rigorous with our language, that we've approved, the town meeting approved a sum, but not a size of the building.
Well, yes, that is true, but I also would say that every article at town meeting, in my opinion, doesn't include just the warrant article. It includes the slides that are presented at town meeting. And they may not be in the warrant, but I think it would, if it were up to me, I would feel remiss not to think of those slides as part of what town meeting voted on, not just the warrant article and not just the motion.
It's an interesting take on town government, I guess.
Absolutely. It's not just the, it's not the warrant article anyway, it's the motion that's delivered to town meeting.
I don't know if you want to run down of what we took off this morning, or maybe that's just too much
No,
detail.
we don't.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
There were.
But I just want to highlight one thing, which is
Thank you,
that
Matt.
we are in a couple of areas taking off things like bleachers in the gymnasium that would be more or less essential, and that we are now going to rely upon private entities to raise funds. Same thing with,
How can you take bleachers out of a gymnasium?
How much are they?
I mean, that's,
they are
87,000.
84,000.
you know,
Well,
you're gonna have people
We're
standing around.
Trying everything.
we're
really
trying
under a
everything
lot-
we
a lot
can.
of pressure,
We're, look, what we, I think the discussion that went on in the committee today was, hey, we have accommodated and created a larger gym. So now we're hoping that there will be elements of the public that would be willing to chip in and provide some of the furnishings for that gym. So, I mean, we're up against the wall here. We're trying to do whatever we can.
Recreation, they can go to the CPC.
That's also potentially possible, I guess. I don't know. I just saying that we are right here cutting.
Yes.
So Matt, is there a place where I can find what we voted on, what we approved? Because if it included the presentations, they're not on the town's website.
Usually our town meetings do have, there's a rundown. If you look at town meeting, the site, then you go to each of the different town meetings, and then there's a link to the different presentations
The
for each of the
handouts,
warrant
yeah.
articles. So
Thanks.
there should be, yeah.
Don, I don't want to get into the legalities, of what was approved or not approved. I think the town certainly watched the presentation and voted on something they thought they were getting. And,
Sure.
whether it's X square feet in the warrant article or not, is, I think, sort of a.
But Peggy, there was a subsequent ballot vote where people voted on a number that did not include presentations, explanations, and schematics.
Well,
So I actually do think, I mean, we're going down a rabbit hole here a little bit, but I actually do think it's a fair statement that the town voted on a number, not the specifics of a building.
Absolutely.
That vote happened within a context of a design process, and was an expression of confidence that the people who were doing the design could deliver an appropriate building within the number.
So
For a whole range of reasons that doesn't seem to be where we are right now.
So Lois and Don, I kind of understand the frustration where you come from, but at the end of the day, a lot of 95% of what happens is town meeting, the legislature, they all vote on numbers, et cetera, but then there's a whole bunch of actual assumptions and design. All of that happens whether it's construction or services. You can't expect the full 100% the detail to go on a ballot, et cetera. The town voted. There was a lot of description around what the design was, the schematics, et cetera. I think it's fair to say they assumed they were voting on the design as
Yeah,
well, and that,
of course.
that came out to X dollars.
That's what they're buying.
I don't think we should get hung up on
Yeah, we've.
the dollar amount.
and- Yeah.
Okay.
And Bob, thank you. Bob has put up a spreadsheet that shows, basically differentiates for us the difference between the dollar budget in the school and the 5% versus 3.5%, which 3.75, which, you know, I mean, none of us can do anything about that, unfortunately, except, you know, buy some bonds for your retirement, but that's Concord bonds.
I really appreciate this chart. I think people will enjoy seeing this.
They
when
will.
They won't relish it, but they'll, you know, they will be very thankful that you presented this. And I'm wondering how else we can be looking at this. For example, maybe we should be focusing our time in figuring out how are we going to get some money to to offset the burden. So we already have what, maybe 1.5 or 2.5 million set aside for this now?
Stabilization.
The stabilization fund, what do we have in that?
I don't know.
I don't remember. It's a couple million.
All right,
We
so I
wanted
think I
5.
think it is. It's,
We wanted 5.
I know, and I
At a
think,
lower number.
well, but, you know, maybe this is where we should be
Now we
putting
need
our
13
time,
million.
which is how do we figure out
How do we
to
ameliorate
find money?
the impact?
Yeah.
I'm gonna move on,
Can I
just a
ask
minute.
one question about that chart though for a minute?
Sure.
Did we borrow any money last?
did.
I think we
Already.
did, right?
We
That
did.
So how much
includes
did we borrow
12
last year?
million.
12, yeah.
So the
12.
102, I mean,
That
so
includes the 12.
that includes the 12, thank you.
Yeah.
So it's basically the interest rate change that was only on the incremental.
Correct.
Thank you.
Right.
And I do think on that chart, we should show the full 115 if
So
it
do
gets
I.
to that. Yeah.
Yep.
yeah.
Okay,
Show
we
the
can do
worst
that.
case
You have to
scenario.
show a range, right? Here's what it would be,
Yeah.
best
Okay.
case, worst case, yeah.
Okay, Bobby, add the 115 on there? Thanks.
One other
I'm gonna,
question on that. It has for 25 years. I know we've all talked about 25 years versus 30 years. Would people like to see 30 years?
Okay, the recommendation of the town manager and the finance department is 25.
That's what I thought.
So
right.
let's keep that
And-
on our list of things to
Okay,
tamp down that interest.
okay.
You know, 25 years, we'll be
25
building,
years is
we'll be building
long enough.
Alcott School all over again. There were a couple other questions that came up last time. One, there were a number of members that were concerned that this larger budget would impact our AAA bond rating. And Bob, you or Gail are prepared to address that, the AAA bond rating with the larger borrowing.
Yeah, the short answer is it'll have no impact, and the long answer would effectively get to the same place. You'd have to.
Give us
you'd
a
have to-
little bit longer than that. I told you we wanted a little more than that.
Concord is generally in very good shape when it comes to leverage. Your debt profile is low. When you do borrow, you tend to borrow 10 years and shorter. You would have to almost double the borrowing for this amount for the rating agencies to even notice. So, you know, there is no issues whatsoever with Concord and debt, and just in terms of how the rating agencies look at it. That has nothing to do with, you know, what the taxpayer can afford, quote unquote. That's just, you know, the financial leverage of the organization.
So Bob, I'm sorry, did you say that it would have to double to impact our rating? Is that, so in other words,
The rating agencies wouldn't pay any attention. You know, first of
Yeah.
all, it probably goes without saying, but this issue you have in front of you is hardly unique to Concord. So there would have to be something that was very unique to Concord to make the rating agencies notice, and it would have to be an order of magnitude change of price.
do you have a sense of what our borrowing capacity is overall?
I don't know what your legal amount is, but it's got to be very close to $100 million more than what you're planning on.
Okay, thanks.
Concord does not have a lot of debt outstanding. And the other point is rating agencies tend to really only care about debt inside the levy. They figure excluded debt is really on the taxpayers, not the organization, if you will. I know you don't always look at it that way, but that's, you know, that's how 90% of the municipalities look at it. So it's you're borrowing inside the tax levy that would more concern the rating agencies.
Yeah, they assume if the taxpayers voted for it, that they've signed up for the
Right.
debt service. No,
And we have a very fine record of collecting our taxes from our residents.
you do, yeah.
We do. Okay,
So just, can we talk about the November 3rd meeting then? Is that?
just one more second.
sure, go ahead.
Christine. I'm trying to go through some of the questions that were asked
Sure,
last time.
I'm sorry.
Just discuss impact on median value, which our little table has,
Mm-hmm.
you know, kept it down. I asked Bob to just do 3 years. We don't need, 30 years. We're not gonna, and I think that gives us the information. And Bob, if you can add the 115, or let's not add the 115. Let's wait until the warrant is,
It's going to be 115.
well,
You can ask Matt. I think it's going to be 115.
he's not
Okay.
the only member deciding.
Yes,
The select board will make that decision,
Well,
and they'll
it's
be
a-
making it tomorrow.
Yeah. no,
The
okay.
warrant closes tomorrow at 12:30. So another question was, if,
The question that I had for the finance committee was, did you want to have other?
Microphone.
I just wanted to ask, does the finance committee have any other input, or do they make any additional or different recommendation on what should be put on the warrant based upon your sense of risk or anything else? You're the finance committee after all.
and Matt asked me that question, and I reminded him, he's the horse, we're the cart. But we're not, maybe we're two horses next to each other. And my sense is once that number has been decided, we will be recommending action or no action on the warrant article as printed. And then eventually the motion and whatnot. So if we want to give the selectmen a strong indication of lowering that number or increasing that number, tonight would be either tonight or as an individual, attend the select board meeting.
Can I make a request? Matt, in this morning's meeting, you showed the actual language of the warrant. Does Bob or Gail have that? And if they can put that up?
Well, but it's not final.
I know, and he's
Yeah.
he's looking for input,
Yep.
right? So,
Actually, I think it's pretty close to final now because, again, unless somebody comes up with a different number to plug
and
in,
I'm not talking
the
about a
rest of the
number, by
language
way.
is
I just,
set.
Amrith, I'm going to call on you while we're waiting for this.
Sure. So the only thing I was, sorry, stupid camera. The only thing I was going to say is we've been talking, and we did this last week as well, of two things. The town voted for a certain school, or the town voted for a certain amount towards the school, 108 million, 115 million. I think the answer we need to provide to both the taxpayers and to the select board should include a third one, which is that the townspeople voted for a certain increase to the bill, the tax bill. And depending on which way you want to look at it, your answer is going to be a little bit different. Personally, I think the position we should take should be based on the impact of the tax bill, because two things have changed, not just the interest rate on the borrowing, but also the cost of the school. And the net impact, if I go by what I want my tax bill to go up by, is going to be materially different from both the 115 and the 108 number. That's all.
Thank you, Amrith. That is a very good question. I jotted that down as,
You want me to share the article that I got around middle of the
Yeah,
day?
you beat me
Matt?
to the punch. Go ahead.
Thank
Sure,
you.
okay.
That'd be great.
after this or while we're putting this up, another question that came up at our last meeting was if we are going to expend this level of funds and therefore tax impact, what other town projects or what other types of things should be traded off? What should we say, okay, we're not going to do this in the near term? And what I've heard so far from Carrie and Bob, you and Gail can can weigh in on this, is that the two main town capital projects, which are identified as tier 1 is the highest,
Tier 3.
tier 3, backwards. The tier 3 projects are the public safety complex and the public works facility. And the last time I heard Carrie speak about this, it was sort of like, well, those would be postponed for 10 years out. Now, all of a sudden, they're on the list, but certainly would be pushed out. Those are the only two that I've heard of. There are some other projects I've heard that came in well over budget, but I haven't heard the, select board or others start to define whether those are going to be postponed or revisited or canceled. And are there other funds that would be then, rescinded and put back into free cash, which could then be reallocated to the stabilization fund. So, yes.
So this says a total of not less than, or not to exceed 115 million. So does that mean 115 million conceptually gets set aside? And then as we're constructing the school and issuing new bonds, we can only issue up to 115, right? Is that the way I generally?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's
And
correct.
suppose the total cost comes in at 110
The money goes back to the town.
and it goes back to general revenue. How does that work?
It just never gets issued.
Well, no, because you've already issued the bonds in anticipation of a certain amount of spending, and you might overissue a little bit, right?
Right.
So what happens to that difference?
Well,
So
if I may, it won't get issued if the bid comes in lower.
that part's true,
Once
but,
it's bid, that's when it gets
but
issued.
there's still construction contingency, and if that's not fully spent, any residual funds would go back to the town.
Into the
Yes.
general revenue?
That Bob would have to answer, but I believe that's true.
Only if borrowed.
Right, only if
No,
we.
only if
Oh, yeah,
borrowed.
if
I'm
you
just trying to
borrow it,
figure
it-
this mechanically out. What happens to the extra money if that
So,
happens?
right, so if we're at the, what did we say, 1083, is that where we are now, somewhere around there?
Yeah.
So the difference between that and the 115, right, that $6 million, whatever it is, right? So that number, is that specific for bidding? Or can it be used for anything? So let's say there are other
So-
overruns on the
So
project.
we did have a bid contingency and
Right.
probably would continue to have that.
Yeah.
And would the size of the bid contingency increase, as a component of this structure? But the idea would be that if the bid contingency is not spent, then of course we just don't borrow that much. But then there's still the aspect of you start to spend down during the project, and of course you're paying off debt, but it's a fixed price project, so that part should be fine, except for there's still some contingency for change orders and all that.
Right.
That could result in residual funds. In fact, I think there were some from the high school, and I think $2 million or something like that. But then in the case of the high school, it was a special case because it was a regional school district. It went back to the school and into a stabilization fund. But in this case, it would go back to the town because it's a Concord project.
It'll be general obligation debt, right?
I just
Yeah.
appeal to Bob.
It is, all of it is, yeah.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah,
It goes back to
okay.
general revenue and that's that. It doesn't go back into school budget or anything else.
No,
I don't think so.
Okay.
no.
Thank you.
Again, there was a special case under the regional school district because it was Carlisle and Concord and, all that, but that was
Okay,
specific
that's
to
all I
that.
want, that's what I wanted to check. Thank you.
So,
you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I see that the number is 115 million, so the slide that was being prepared to show tax impact needs to have that number on it.
Sure. Absolutely.
And Matt, is there some mechanism, so the fear would be, right, once you give somebody a not to exceed, right, we spend to that, right? So that's the concern that I have, right? But is there a way to manage that? You did it with the bidding contingency because you tailored it
That's
to
right.
that.
That's right.
Right.
And as you see, the warrant article doesn't specify.
No, it does not.
Right.
Right.
So we can still determine what amount we consider to be bid contingency.
Right. So that was the thing I mentioned earlier. So your question on whether Finance Committee has a view, you know, I want the number to be as low as it can be, but I also want to have a good understanding of what the analysis is in that contingency before I would say, yeah, that's a good number. And I haven't seen one, right? So I heard
There was the beginning of that analysis done towards the end of the meeting
Right, and I
today. And then
listened
at
to
a
it.
certain point, people said,
it-
oh,
Right.
you're nervous, you know, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, effectively, you know,
Yeah,
and
right.
just say, look, let's just put, they've already been working with that maximum number. They felt like that's sort of a beyond the pale number. And they just thought, well, the safest thing is just stick with the beyond the pale number. Realizing that there are other risks that brings. First of
Right.
all, that voters will see this warrant and go, what?
Yeah.
Or the second thing, that bidders will see this number and say, yeah, you know, but it's still a competitive bidding
It's
world
still
out
competitive
there.
bid.
Or it's not big enough, right? So I
Well,
don't
that was
know
why
that
the
it's beyond the
115, I think the
pale.
general feeling, again, I can't speak for the committee, but the general feeling was if the project ended up being more than 115, we really do need to go back to the drawing board. That clearly we're out of our league, you know, we do need to do something different.
Put that
But
in writing.
that's really
I want
the,
you to put that in writing.
that's the point.
I want that to
No,
happen.
no, but I mean, well, the thing is, we actually will have to, one way or another, because again, if 115 doesn't end up being adequate, we have a design for a building that can't be built, and it's going to be a 100% design at that point. We will have to go back, redesign, take more time, all that stuff.
But I
It's
think
going to
the
be
view
different.
is that it's enough, there's enough freeboard in that, you know, it's enough, it's 103, now it's 108, so that's 5 million increase. So 15 million is another, you know, 6 or
I
7
think
million.
the gut feel is,
Yeah,
and
the gut-
especially with the Fed taking really aggressive, you know,
Interest
especially targeting
Yeah.
the real estate market, that
It's,
I think that we're not going to have another year of
No.
what we just saw.
Could I ask,
That's me speaking as a layman, but, you know.
could I ask Bob to update the slide for 115 million? I'd like to see the numbers.
Yeah, we had it once before. It's like 1,500, 1,500.
it should be the same as the,
We did it a couple weeks ago.
it
It's
should
about
be the same as the
1,500.
But I
102 to
want,
108.
I would like to see it, I would like to see it on the slide.
Okay, so Bob,
Yeah,
can you,
At what percentage, at what interest rate? At 2.5, 3 and 3/4, or 5?
okay, I'm
Both.
Amrith, I didn't hear you.
No, my question is what interest rate? Because is it going to be 3 3/4 or 5?
5.
Both. Suresh?
Yeah.
Your hand up?
I think the question I have was more for Bob, and I think I heard Matt say yes, the regional school district was one thing, but the most of the time that my understanding is, or working with different communities, is the borrowing takes place for the cash flow, anticipated cash flow. So you're not borrowing for the contingencies upfront. If the contract, if you have a, let's say, it's a 2-year project and your cost is about 50 million per year, you're borrowing in tranches as you need and based upon the cash flow. So you're not borrowing the whole $115 million upfront. And let's say the final budget or final cost, including any contingencies we use based upon the design that was bid, is 110 million. In the end, you're issuing a bond for the final cost of 110 million. You're not using up the 5 million. It's not going back in the general fund because you never borrowed against that. Am I correct in saying that, Bob?
If that's the way it happens, yes, but there's no guarantee that you'll exactly match what you need to do by borrowing. Borrowing is not something you can generally just easily rush out and do. The projects I've done before, I've always borrowed 100% right away. But I've not done anything this size. So this does call for a different strategy.
Well, it also depends on where you think interest rates are going to go. I know in When we did Alcott School, we borrowed the whole thing up front because the interest rate happened to be quite low at the time.
Yeah, I mean,
And-
if sort of worst comes to worst and you've over borrowed, there's different remedies available, but one of them is to set up a stabilization fund for the next time that the town is asked to do an excluded debt, and you've got a pot of money to offset that cost. That's the easiest way.
Cameron, you still have your hand up, or?
Yeah, I still have my hand up. So this is a question probably also for Bob, but the vote at last year's town meeting and the election vote didn't raise the levy limit, did it?
I didn't quite understand what you said, Amber.
The fact that the town voted to raise a sum of 107 or whatever, I saw the article had an amount, and then there's an additional 12 million. It hasn't yet raised the levy limit.
I would say it does. Because you've just asked for an excluded, an amount above the levy limit to be added on. So, I mean, there's still a Prop 2.5 levy limit. And if that's really what you're thinking of, that didn't change.
Yeah.
But
I'm asking whether
the amount that can be levied did change.
No, I'm asking whether there's going to have to be another Prop 2.5 vote.
You have, I can't remember, $3 or $4 million unlevied, unused.
No, it's an override.
Separate issue.
It's excluded, it's,
Oh, it's an excluded debt, so it's not going to be.
you can override Prop 2.5 either for debt.
Understood.
That's what this would be. You could also override Prop 2.5 for operational expenses if you have to, which was done year after year back in the around 2000.
Okay.
But this should not affect our levy limit capacity. One possible, something that Carrie said, and I'm just going to throw this out there, but is one way to ameliorate the tax impact is slow down. She was, our OPEB funding, it's, so fantastic. Can we slow that down? Just asking the question. We're way ahead of most other towns. We're making huge progress. Is that something we could divert? I turn it to you, Christine. You're the detail person on this.
We did that during COVID. So I thought that's what Carrie was talking about, Peggy. So I don't know if she was recommending that we do it again.
Oh, I don't think she was making any recommendations.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm just saying is.
You were just noting as a possibility.
OPEB and.
It is, you could, I assume we could do that. We could you could change it.
Could we
I don't know.
divert that into the stabilization?
It would just be less expenses that might create more free cash, which you could do,
Right.
You could do something with, so that's.
So should we put that on our list?
We could
and
talk about it and see,
consider?
but yeah, sure.
Before we do that, can we reverse engineer this
Try.
$1,128 or the $1,300? Because how much spending per year does that represent? Because that's really what
per
we're talking
year.
about. Yeah, because if you're talking about
have to
where
look at
else
the
can you
debt
get
ser-
savings, right?
So
How much
it adds
spending
about
per year?
7 million in debt service.
Per
So
year?
Yeah, it's about,
Oh,
it's about,
so 7 million?
it's probably higher now. That was at 3%. So
You
maybe it's
take in the
8.
108
Seven
So we
divided
add
by
about 8
25,
million
yeah.
a year when we're full in, right?
Sure.
So,
At the beginning, it's about $500,000, and it peters down to half of that over 25 years,
So is it
depending on how you borrow.
Full in?
Yeah, it's 7 or 8 million in debt service, right, Bob?
Well, and can I ask too that we add to that analysis the number that we showed in the FinCom report that was issued for that special town meeting? To your point, this was the attachments are part of the article, and it said $1,045.14. That was the comparable number at that time. So the impact that the voters expected, $1,045.14.
In FY25?
Level debt estimated annual impact, 25 years, is what it was labeled.
Okay.
Yeah, I think including that would be really important because I think that's effectively what people are paying.
Oh, and I'm sorry, but that was based on the average value. Then is this median or average that we're
This is
using?
median.
This is median. So median was $901.94. So we told the voters $901.94 on the median value.
Yeah, and the reason is last winter you used, as you said, level debt service.
Yep.
And I'm using level principal. It's far easier to calculate. We could ask someone to calculate level debt service. So the numbers in front of you are in the $1,200 or depending $1,300 range, and they go down to $600 or $700 a year on the 25th year. And somewhere in between is the number that was shown last winter.
Yeah.
But if the number which was shared last time was based on one kind of calculation, would it be easier to the taxpayer if we did it apples to apples? And told them this change is going to be so many dollars, whatever that is, rather than saying, well, we're calculating it a different way.
Yeah.
Bob,
At some point, it certainly may be, but I will say that issuing level debt service is more unusual than usual and usually a little more expensive. Doesn't mean you can't do it. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but it wouldn't be the default.
Bob, could I ask you and Gail and Carrie to make a recommendation on level debt or level payment? I thought it was the other. I thought it was level payment. Is that
Level
right?
level principal.
Level principal. We need a recommendation on that, on the financing approach. And we need the spreadsheet updated. So we've got apples to apples with what was voted at town meeting, Don. I think that's an excellent idea. What the presentation was. And then adding the 115, showing both at the 5% and 3.75%, 3.75%. And reissue that to the finance committee with your recommendation, with Carrie's recommendation on the financing approach. I appreciate this is easier, but and Betsy Levinson, do not print this in the paper until we have settled on something, okay? Because
Yeah, I was going to ask you anyway if I could get a copy of the document to have in front of me. So, yes. Well, by Tuesday, is it possible by next Tuesday?
Next Tuesday. No.
I don't think so.
We wouldn't have looked at it.
I don't think so, because it'll be, the finance committee is gonna want to consider the financing approach.
All right.
Can I ask
Sorry.
one more?
Yes.
As part of this document.
Fair,
So
sure.
I go back to putting this in context. This, if it's 6 million, 7 million, whatever that number is per year, average, however we want to convey it. And the reason is, I take a look at fiscal year 26 projections that they gave us 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
$62 million total town budget. So when you're talking a $6 or $7 million, exactly, that's like a 10%. If you want to look elsewhere for money,
You gotta look for a lot.
you got to look for a lot,
Yep.
right? So I think it's just important for folks to understand that context.
I have one question. We keep putting these numbers with the old interest rate. Is it even relevant at this point? It's a dead issue. You can't borrow the money at that rate.
But I think it shows the taxpayer how much is coming from just that debt service increase, how much of the increase in their taxes is coming from the debt portion.
Versus
It's out of the
versus
cost
the increase in cost.
Yeah, it's out of
So I
their
think it's
hands.
just to give them
that's
a little more information.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
And I do just want to piggyback on what Amrith and Don said, and what was shown in town meeting was based on that flat debt service. So I think that's what we need to be showing in this table to have
Okay.
apples to apples. And because if we show like two scenarios, that's just going to be too confusing. I feel like it needs to be comparable to what they voted on, right?
Okay.
Or
Okay, so
better, it
Bob, change in plans. We're going to just use the same financing approach that we voted on in town meeting.
Well, actually, I don't completely agree with that. Because
Who's
I think
speaking?
that's Lindsay's, it's Lois. It's Lois, I'm sorry. Lindsay, I think Lindsay's making an excellent point. We have to include that so people understand what's changed. We also need to give people a realistic expectation. So we need to have a better idea of how we're going to approach the debt to decide how much of this we need to present. And I think people are able to distinguish between the different approaches. You can explain, this is how it was done. This is what the tax increase would look like if there's this kind of financing. This is what it will look like if there's another kind of financing. You can explain that. I just don't want this to be inadvertently misleading because we present it hoping to give people an accurate comparison to what they were told 9 months ago, and then have them face a reality in a couple of months that doesn't reflect that.
Peggy, may I ask Louis for a clarification?
Pardon me, Amber?
May I ask Louis a clarification?
Absolutely.
So Louis, if I understand correctly, what you're saying is it would make it more clear to a taxpayer if you were to say, we came to you 9 months ago with a certain request, and we assumed that the school was going to cost X dollars. The interest rate was going to be so many %, and we thought we were going to finance it this way. Things have changed in the last 9 months. We believe the school may cost more than X dollars. The interest rate is higher, and we've looked at it again, and we figured there's a better way to finance it. It's a different way to finance it. Given what we're thinking right now in these new numbers, what was, I don't know, reading this sheet, what was 1,159 may go up to 1,461. Is that the gist of what you're saying?
Yes, the gist of what I'm saying is that, and I don't specifically recall what assumptions we used in the numbers that were presented at the original vote. I don't remember that exactly how that was done. I don't have the documents in front of me right now, but I don't want to inadvertently set a different, an unreasonable set of expectations for people.
Would this be a good thing to have in the FinCom report?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
this is all stuff that will end up being in the FinCom report. I think definitely I agree. But I also think what the part of the value of what Peggy and Bob have been doing is to work on a very simple presentation. And I don't want to muddy that too much. And I think and confuse people. So we need to strike a balance there. We want to keep the presentation clean and simple, but we don't want it to become inadvertently misleading.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Greg.
So we need to get a decision on which way we're going to go before we do any of what wording or any of that stuff. We need to figure out which way we're going to level it or pay for this, correct?
Yes.
Bob, do you know when that decision would be made, or is that after a warrant, or when would you typically make that decision?
Sorry, what decision? The how to finance it?
How to find it, which way to finance it? Because we're talking about comparing apples to apples here, and we can't write anything until we know which way to finance it. But when do you know which way you're going to finance it?
Well, that's normally, now this is different because this is a lot of money and a lot of attention, but traditionally and by state law, the treasurer is the only one empowered to make that decision, not even the town manager. And that's because of market conditions. The treasurer goes out with the financial advisor and deals with whatever the market conditions are on the day of issuance and has the legal authority to react to it. As a practical matter, if the town feels strongly about one way or the other, I'm reasonably sure that you could instruct the treasurer and the treasurer would do that. It's, inside the levy, I would say I would make a strong recommendation to do level principal because you're always going to be borrowing money. But outside the levy, it is different. If you're anticipating doing a few projects outside the levy, then I'd also say level principal. But if you're not really going to do very much over a long period of time, then level debt service has more of an appeal, I guess I'll say.
So the other consideration we had was the peak, right?
Yeah.
So we were hitting the peak in whatever it was, 2026, 7, and
6 or 7.
we're able to soften that peak by doing level payment versus the declining because it's much heavier in the front. So that was part of the consideration that we talked about last year with, at the time, Kerry, who was the CFO and treasurer. So we weren't aware that that had changed. I'm still not aware that it's changed, but if it has, then we need, I agree with Lois, we should show people what, explain to them that it's changed. But if it hasn't changed, that's, we'll use it.
Yeah, in June, the amount that was borrowed level principal, just again, because that's the default. That's what you do unless you specifically ask otherwise. And that has no bearing on what is done with the rest, just to share that.
Okay, we have.
I'll chat with Carrie and see if she has any history. I don't think it's a make or break thing. If the town feels strongly for any reason that it should be done a certain way, then that's fine. I will just say, it is usually in the long run slightly more expensive to do level debt service because that's not what the investors are looking to get for cash flow.
That would just raise the question of how we would it to taxpayers when we go to warrant. To leave it open.
The
for Bob to make the
warrant's
decision.
going out.
At
town meeting.
How we word it went from, what was your number, 1,040 to?
It was $901.
Whatever that number was, to now this, we have to figure out how to word it and give Bob the flexibility to choose which way he sees fit at the time.
Right, it would be Gail, not Bob.
Gail,
but-
sorry.
All right. Bob, could you put that spreadsheet back up? The little one? Ray, I see your hand is up. Just 1 second, all right?
Yeah, let me just find it.
All right, go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, does level debt service versus level principal do somewhat the same impact on the peak that Chris mentioned in terms of overall debt? Could that be accomplished also just by lengthening the payment period from 25 to 30 years?
Well, as I understand it, the town has some sort of an offset revolving fund that it could use to also manage the peak in the early years, regardless of how you choose it. And then to some earlier comments, depending on how the project cash flow is laid out and how much certainty there is or uncertainty, you don't have to borrow it all at once. You can sort of step out and borrow what you need to do every so often, maybe once a year. I wouldn't want to do it more often than that. So there can be a lot of engineering, if you will, on the cost to the taxpayer.
Okay, so the spreadsheet that we have here is based on level debt, is that correct?
No, level principles. You see how in 25, 6, and 7, the amounts go down?
Okay,
That's because you're paying less interest every year because the amount of principal is getting lower.
Okay. And that's the same approach that was presented at town meeting?
No.
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 So town meeting had level debt. Can I?
Yes, please.
So once we're done with this, I think presenting 5 or 6 rows is going to be complex.
It is, it's
So
too many.
I can raise my hand, Chris, if you want to join. Maybe we work with Bob and Carrie.
Thank
I
you.
think what we're really trying to do is last year, this is what it was. Because of interest rate changes, here's the additional difference at the same cost. And then isolate, well, here's the cost differences because supply chain and here's the.
Okay.
It'll be very simple. for
This
folks
was supposed to
understand the
be
various
really
factors.
simple.
I understand, but
We'll also know
we're-
what the assumptions are.
exactly. So,
Okay, and put
we can work
asterisks
together
at the bottom.
And come back with a clean version. for
That would
folks.
be awesome. Thank you so
Right.
much. And
I think you just used lines 1, 2, 4, and 6. And I will change, Matt, the 108.3.
yeah.
We'll
Okay,
figure
so
it out.
I'm going to delegate Christine and Parashar to.
One more item while you're looking at that. If I recall correctly, and I don't have a computer with me, in the warrant the last time, we had the debt graphed out over time.
Yes.
In our,
We showed the peak.
Yes.
we did.
We showed where it was coming from. So, that one there.
Yeah.
Can we have something like that as well?
Could have that updated.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. mean, it's very, very important.
Okay, so I'm gonna get back to a separate question. We are gonna have additional discussions on this. But we do have a reporter online chomping at the bit to put this in the paper. Do we want to release it?
No.
I think I would rather have.
We need to look
Okay.
at it and talk about
Let
it,
us-
make sure everything's correct
Right.
before we
Yes.
put anything out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right,
But
Betsy?
isn't this a public meeting?
Yeah, this is a public meeting.
Sure.
Yeah.
No,
On what we're
Do what
saying,
you
but
want.
nothing's
Yeah.
final.
It just
nothing's
say
final,
it.
but it's a public meeting and the documents are up for anybody who wanted to see. I recognize it's not final.
okay.
It's a public meeting.
Yeah.
In terms of special town meeting, wouldn't we have these as handouts as well?
By the time we get to special town meeting, we will absolutely have this information.
Yeah.
squared.
Even before that, hopefully.
Yeah.
There'll be a report that includes this.
We'll be having our hearing on the 17th. Okay,
Right.
all right.
So Betsy could say that too.
She can say
All
what-
financial information will be available for.
Or
for
some
special town
preliminary
meeting.
numbers were discussed, yeah.
Right.
Oh, I like that. Thank you very much.
Okay,
See, she's gonna do your job for you.
Yeah.
okay, hold on. So that hearing, that's a presentation by the sponsor of the warrant. So that'll be the middle school building committee who will do that presentation. It's not our presentation, just so you
It's our
understand.
presentation, it's our hearing, yes.
I'm
Yes,
talking about a
no, I
special
know.
town meeting. We'd have a handout at the table.
They would.
We
Oh, you're
would.
talking.
Oh, we would as well. We have,
Oh, we
we'll
have
have
a
the
report.
fi-
Oh,
we have
we'd
the
have a
finance
report,
committee
Dave.
report.
Yeah, we have a report. Oh, I thought you were talking about the hearing. Sorry.
No.
That's
not
what I
the
was
hearing.
talking about earlier.
Oh, but hold on, when we do our hearing,
Yeah,
they're coming to us, I get that. We then ultimately also have to make a recommendation, right?
we afterwards.
the hearing.
We don't do it at the
I
hearing.
understand,
right.
But afterwards.
Yes, we do.
And I would expect at that point, we'd have cleaned up versions
I
of
would
some
hope
of this
so.
stuff.
Yep.
And that would inform our decision.
Yes, absolutely.
Exactly, and that would be well before
Yeah.
the special
I
town
just,
meeting.
I just wanted to make sure they weren't talking about something we were presenting at the hearing, that's all.
Fair enough.
But I,
Okay.
and I don't like to waste paper, but I think it would be good to have it as a handout at special town meeting.
Oh, yeah.
If they have a table for handout.
Well, yeah, but Dee, that's our handout for special town meeting is our report,
Is the report.
which is sent out in advance of special town meeting and is also available at special town.
Here
meeting.
at the
That's,
meeting.
You know,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to something started to talk about. If anyone has any other ideas for trade-offs that things that the town has proposed and the high tier level, because it's, or postponed or whatnot, we should keep that on our radar screen. I know
Sell
that
the
was.
Sanborn property, right? So we've had that one on the list before.
The what?
Right.
Use the proceeds from the sale of the Sanborn,
Peabody.
Peabody, pardon me, the Peabody property against the debt service.
Yep,
Yeah,
that's
but that always comes up with a timing issue. That doesn't reduce the amount that you borrow. I mean, every time we've raised this, the answer is, and I think it's simply the answer, at least as I understand it, is that that doesn't come in time to reduce the borrowing.
it should still be on the list.
It'll, you're right, you still have to build the building, right? But it can be used to offset future debt service, right? So if we're paying 7 million a year in debt service and once the thing is in service, right? Once the building is being used, that's money that could be used to lower that debt
To pay
service.
it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that has to do with the terms on which the money has been borrowed. So if you're talking about literally prepaying debt, if you're talking about using the proceeds to keep funding a stabilization fund to continue to lower property taxes, that's different. Well, all this is, we should talk about them. I don't have the expertise to know what you can do, but I know that it doesn't affect the amount of because of the timing issues. The money has to be borrowed, and then eventually the fact that space is now freed up and can be monetized for the town creates another fund of money that there may be uses for.
Could put it in the stabilization.
Right, it doesn't reduce the 115.
It doesn't, yeah.
No, they haven't made that decision, right?
So why are we talking about this?
Because we want to sell it.
We're trying to find alternatives.
What's going to come up is that the cost of demolition and clearing that site with hazardous materials and et cetera is going to offset any proceeds. So
Somebody's going to
that's,
want to do something with it.
you know,
Still have to
blah, blah,
get rid
blah.
of the one building
Yeah.
Yeah.
that is attached to or next to the new construction. You still have to get
Yes.
rid of that
Yeah. Yeah.
before we can do anything else.
I think we should put use of the stabilization funds as one of the ideas, but note that that comes at the expense of something else that we're not going to do with that money, because
Yeah.
it's not as if that's a reduction in the cost of this
But we've
project.
already tagged that for debt stable. It's already tagged.
Stabilization fund.
It's a debt
A
stabilization.
debt stabilization, no, I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the OPEB really, to me, would be like redirecting some money into the stabilization fund
Sure.
that
Yeah.
might otherwise be
Right.
used for some other.
Same
Right,
thing with
right.
ARPA, right? So ARPA's going to flow through free
ARPA.
cash, so
Right.
ARPA could be used for
And, you know, I'm
a
looking at,
stabilization reserve.
Yep.
I'm looking at the town budget, major categories. There's 35 million in fiscal year 26 in personnel and expenses. So again, nothing says it has to be one-time things at the end of the day. If there are major programs that can contribute, or 10 small ones, at $1 million,
Yep.
that's something we ought to be considering.
The other place where we got the big bump last year on stabilization was the assessor's overlay. So that's
Oh.
another one you might want to ask about, what's the status of that? Kerry had thought there might be, you know,
Overlay.
this was a reassessment year, I
Yeah.
think,
Yes,
so
it
they
was.
wanted to be cautious about what they released, but perhaps when we check in now, it may be clearer if there was something available there.
No.
No,
Every 3
no,
years.
it was unusual, yeah, right, every couple of years they might use it, yeah.
From my,
Okay.
Can we go back to OPEB for 1 minute, please?
Yes.
Because this 1.3 million, 1.4 million is what we're expected to pay out each year for OPEB.
Is that the contribution? Yeah.
That's the contribution
Okay.
I'm looking at. And so
So
my
it's not all that much. Yeah.
sorry? But no, but I guess the question is, what are the implications if we delay that for 10 years?
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
so get.
You
get
don't pay it
out-
off in 30, 31 or whatever, so we.
Yeah, so we
yeah.
should probably get some,
Carrie can tell, I think she could tell us
whatever,
that.
Ask that
like,
question.
what are the implications for the town's
Yeah.
finances,
Yeah.
et cetera, risk? Because that would solve at least 1/7 of the
Yeah.
increase.
Right, right,
Well, I mean,
right.
Okay.
gotta overturn all the cushions.
we haven't mentioned the big one, which is the lack of state aid here, and this has come up every conversation I've had with people, is, well, it's not going to cost us 100 million because the state's going to pay half. So
No,
I
they're
think we
not.
need to answer that as well, and I don't have a clue why we don't get the aid. I did
You
Google.
mean MSBA, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
They tried 4 times, yeah, 4
Yeah,
times.
I took a look online. I saw Weston got
Rejected.
aid for their elementary
Yeah.
school.
Yeah, we were rejected.
What was it? Do you know?
I don't think there was, it was just, they make a decision right on us, who they think is the best,
town?
the best place to go, and we don't get the
So
money.
Weston got aid, but we didn't.
But we got the high school, right? So we had
Right,
gotten the
we
high
got the high
school
school.
several years
Yes,
earlier.
we
I
did.
don't know the rationale.
I see. Okay, fair enough.
We tried. The answer was no.
Is there anything in the new federal programs to Build Back Better that would go to to help with the schools?
I don't think so, but that could, it's going to help with infrastructure in the town potentially, so it could free up funds indirectly, you know, if
Maybe the
you
road-
you
the
weren't
road
spending
fund.
it. It could be used
Roads.
for roads, and maybe that helps. I don't know.
So we should ask Bob and Kerry if they could pursue that, if they could
they
take
have
a
any-
look at what we've received, where it's going, and then is there some, you know, in other words, can we move funds?
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think, do they know what they're getting in that? I don't know the answer. I haven't heard a number on
Bob,
that.
do you know if you're getting anything from the Build Back
I
Better?
think it goes to the state, and the state allocates it.
No, I don't. I'm not familiar with that one.
Gail, do you have a sense?
I don't
of
think
it?
it's a big number, though.
I don't think we've heard definitively yet. I think it's still all being worked through, but we can check, we can look into it.
The other one that you mentioned Dee, is to me a good one, which is CPC.
Hang on 1 second, let me, I have to correct that. I'm thinking the Build Back Better would probably hit us on the transportation side. And I know the new town manager, or there is a person who's going to be hired as the town transportation person, a full-time person. And that funding would probably be more appropriate for whatever they're trying to do with transportation in the town. The Build Back Better, or the infrastructure Build Back Better discussion.
So I think what we were saying is, for example, if it was to repair roads, and we already have could move what we have budgeted to repair roads to the building.
Yeah, I think that the challenge a little bit is that the federal government is still issuing and creating programs to attach to the funding authorizations and sources. So the information is just starting to come out. So we don't have final definitive guidance yet, but we are closely monitoring it.
Okay.
Chris had a question.
Yeah.
He had a
Yeah,
comment.
so
Okay,
on
I
CPC,
said
so-
the
yeah, so
CPC and
CPC,
recreation.
Right, well, we have fields,
However,
yes.
if I remember correctly, it's outdoor recreation.
Well, there's fields.
Well, we have fields, yeah. They
There's a
can
lot of
apply
money for
that,
fields in
but
that
not
budget.
for the bleachers.
No, not for the bleachers, but there are fields, so
What if they're outside?
they are.
Well, I was gonna say, if you can take,
But they call them that's what they call them bleachers.
It is New England,
You know, if
right.
you-
Those wouldn't be used very
not
often,
far
metal
off,
ones.
If they could have a side of the building that came up, so that it was then considered.
But we don't have to, because you could
No,
make
we
an
don't.
argument that you could use it for fields. So why isn't, CPC, is $2 million a year, somewhere around there?
Use the CPC for the white fields.
Yeah.
The-
Oh,
the-
Well,
the,
it's
fields at the high
something
school.
that could be considered in future years.
let's consider it.
I mean,
That's
there
a
are couple
good,
of
that's a
other
good one,
things
yep.
Going on there too.
Okay, I'm
D.
we're gonna close down this discussion, if you guys don't mind.
I think.
Oh, right.
And,
Is Ray got his hand?
right,
I don't know, does he?
Yeah, I was gonna say, D, if you want to get credit in the minutes, you're gonna have to speak closer to the microphone.
Oh, well, good.
Thank you. Thank you.
okay.
As long as they get that correction.
All right, I want to
about-
just talk about our schedule. Everything is pretty straightforward. But we do have a meeting on November 3rd. And then we also have a regular meeting on November 10th, if needed. And we have the public hearing on the 17th, along with the guidelines meeting and regular voting the final guidelines on the 21st. So do people feel like they need the November 3rd meeting, or should we keep it on? And
Well, so it's a question for the committee, right? So I thought,
Yeah.
an option would be that some of the questions that we still have, or do we want to hear from the building committee ourselves on what they want to put in? If they're not going to, if we know the number is just 115 and here's the design, you may not want to meet with them. At the time we talked about this, we thought it'd be a more,
right,
they might have options and so forth, but I don't think that's going to happen.
why don't we keep it on for now, but possibly cancel? I don't want to do
I mean,
this
it's
all
next
over
week.
again.
It's next week, so you'd
When
have
do
to
we have to
decide.
post it?
You'd have to post it by Tuesday,
Oh my
right? So
God,
you-
it's
you
next
have to
week.
know.
Yeah.
I thought Gail, is Gail on right still? So Gail, this morning, the building committee just talked, because I thought it was for them. So if they can't make it, that's another factor
They
here to
can't
think
make it.
about.
They have conflicts.
They had conflicts, I thought, so,
Okay, let's cancel it.
okay,
God, we're meeting the very following week.
okay.
I don't feel like we are going to have that much more information
Okay,
between now and
all right.
next week.
Okay,
So
so
we're
we'll,
not doing anything on November 3rd?
that's what it sounds like. So on the 17th, then, we're going to do guidelines.
So can I go back to the 10th for a minute now?
Yeah,
Oh, I'm
10.
sorry, go
I think it
ahead,
might be-
sorry.
So
sorry.
maybe what I would propose is by the 10th, we can come up with that revised table,
Yep,
maybe the additional information that we've talked about,
Okay,
so that on the 10th, we can come back as a committee with some real numbers, et cetera, and go over the information that we've said we'd wanted. And
Okay.
that, I think, might help us as we go into the meeting on the public hearing on the 17th.
On the 17th.
Does that make sense?
yeah, it does to
Yes.
me.
There's
does.
something I have down here, the capital planning
Yeah, we
Public
do.
forum number
meeting?
2.
Yeah,
Yep.
we have that too.
Is on that.
Yeah,
right,
is.
and
At
it's-
7 o'clock,
It
right?
is.
Yep, and it says
what
regular
is-
meeting if needed also on the
So
10th.
what
We
is the
have it
ca- the-
followed by a regular
What's the
meeting.
Okay.
capital planning
So-
public forum number 2?
That's, so there are, in the revised process that the town adopted,
Yep.
there's 3 meetings. The second one is with the finance committee.
Yeah.
So the schools in the town present to us the long-term capital plan.
Okay.
Right, so that's
They're
what
coming
that
to
is.
us.
They come to us, right?
Because the first one didn't take that long.
It did, I don't think it will take
No.
that
No,
long.
when they already did one.
Yeah.
That was pretty short.
Is that also on the 17th?
No,
Yeah,
let's
it's on the
back up.
10th.
So,
Sorry.
November 10th, there is a Finance Committee Capital Planning Public Forum.
Yep.
They're coming to us with capital plan.
And then we'll have a
And we'll
regular
have a
meeting.
regular meeting, we'll go
immediately
over
Following.
on the 10th, and at the regular meeting after that public hearing, I'm proposing we go over the information that we've developed with response to all these questions.
Perfect.
The 17th, the following week, is when our public hearing is for the middle school project.
And
And
we're
after that-
more, we organize it and listen, call on people, but
They present.
but they do the presentation. It's not
They
our
do the presentation.
Right, we ask
And the
questions.
town
That's the
town asks
17th?
questions.
Yes.
That's the 17th.
The town and the schools are also scheduled to come back and say, we heard you, or we didn't hear you. Here's where we are with our budgets relative to your guidelines.
And that's the 21st.
That's
the
gonna be heck
17th.
of it. Wowee.
Is there any chance you can start the public hearing before 7? I know some boards do that.
No, we can.
Well, select boards moved till 6 to 6:30.
I think
Could you-
FinCom just may want to consider that because that is a busy night.
Is that the 17th?
Yes.
Okay, let's do that at 6:30. You guys okay with that?
Yeah.
The guide.
Let's do it at 6.
Which one? The hearing starts
The
at
The hearing.
6:30?
The public hearing
Do
for the
that
middle
at
school building
Yep.
project starts at 6:30,
6:30.
17th.
Hey, Matt, is that in the, have we already published that date? Can we change it? If we change the time on it? Is that in the
Well,
warrant or?
Have an agenda item. We have an agenda item in tomorrow's select board meeting to look at the calendar, STM calendar, because we may end up adding either a select board public hearing or having a joint public hearing with you all.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Because when you
There are a
look
couple
at some of the other
additional
articles that have been put on the warrant, they're not financial.
Oh,
So we need a public hearing that deals select,
Okay.
and we may just do it for the select board itself, just
Okay.
because it sounds like this is already going to be slammed.
yeah.
So if it's problematic to have the hearing at 6:30, we could call our meeting
Yeah,
at
the guidelines
6:30
meeting,
and do
yeah.
the guidelines first.
We
And
could.
then then break, go to the hearing,
Yep.
come back,
It's tough.
whatever.
That's tough. It's not great to do that. That's not great to do that. But,
Okay.
you can, you're right.
Yeah.
Could we start
Okay.
at 6?
I see Amrith has his hand raised.
Cameron?
Yeah, I just have a request for Bob. Can you put up your spreadsheet for a second or take a look at the email I just sent you, please? That's all I had.
Not for us.
Yeah, the question I was trying to answer, Peggy, was this. We told taxpayers last at the ATM that the impact on the tax bill was going to be a certain amount. The interest rate is now higher. I'm just wondering how much we can spend in the new spending model or repayment model to get the same tax impact. Does that question make sense?
I didn't quite follow you. No, I didn't quite follow.
We told the taxpayers the tax bill was going to go up by $1,000 or $1,100 or whatever. Interest
Okay.
rates have gone up. How much more can we spend or how much less do we have to spend in order to have the same tax bill impact if we were to do this change in the way in which we repay? Thanks, Bob. I'm just going to take a screenshot of that if you don't mind. Thanks, I'm all set.
Difference between 115.
Yeah. So were you,
Yeah, even the amount that we voted at town meeting or the presentation
Cost more.
at town meeting is no longer accurate because we were not able to finance at that rate.
that's his
Yeah.
point, right?
That's my question. How much less would it have to be?
Yeah, I think it's going to be in the low 90 millions.
Low 90s.
I'll do it though. I'll send it to you.
Thank you so much.
Maybe you, Chris, can
Yes, question I would
add
ask.
some information like that to the spreadsheet. Okay,
So what is on the 21st?
we're going to vote on the 21st. What I have down is that we're going to vote our position to recommend affirmative action or no action on the middle school warrant article.
And is that at 7 PM?
Yes. And we need to vote on those so that they can get into the finance committee report, which is my next subject. Lois,
I'm still here.
Madam Clerk,
Yeah.
I think the Madam Clerk needs to be responsible for the finance committee report.
Yep. Got it.
So
All right.
I am sure that Bob and Gail can provide you a template, and maybe you and yes, you can, Bob. We're gonna.
It'll be a new one. There's none that exist.
Bob,
the town manager.
we'll work on this offline.
Okay.
We've done, this is not our first time at this rodeo. We've done our full, we've revised the templates for our full ATM finance committee reports a couple times in the last couple of years. And we did a special town meeting report last year.
Last January.
So
February.
we can, you and I will work on it. You will find, and I say this without shame, what I need support on is the numbers in the spreadsheets. And everybody on the committee who's worked with me on writing the reports knows I'm a words guy and not a numbers guy.
Okay.
So I'll rely on you for that and we'll do it.
And we don't need to do guidelines, and we don't need to, there's a lot of stuff we don't have to put in there because, it's just a special town meeting.
Yeah, just, and are there other, Matt referred to something that I wasn't aware of. I thought there was just going to be a single warrant article, which was say for the middle school. Are there other warrant articles for a special town meeting? And are there any other articles that FinCom will be making recommendations on?
My understanding from the chair breakfast is that there are a couple of renewals for home rule petitions, which don't really involve us. The warrant's still open. No citizen petitions have come forward, but it's open till 12:30 tomorrow.
There may be.
Anything else, Matt?
Yeah, so there's also a pair of articles that that return funds from the CPC for the Christopher Heights to the, first of all, to, I forget, there's some specific fund that the state required. And then I thought it was going to go to the Housing Trust, but what I read today is it's to go to Assabet Bluff. That's the second of those warrant articles. So you may or may not have a reason to weigh in on that.
Yes, we would.
Yeah, we would have to weigh in on that.
There are going to be maybe 2 articles that the CPC is going to put forth.
I have the draft text if you want.
So how much money is that?
$1 million.
So can that be redirected to the
1.1
middle school
million.
stabilization fund?
Not if it's already in CPC.
CPC funds.
Well, if it goes.
It's
oh,
CPC
it's
funds.
within
It
those
was
funds.
designated for affordable housing.
Let's think of it this way, Parashar.
I'm looking for money.
I'm looking for money. What I'm about to say is maybe this year we don't put any free cash into affordable housing. We'll have the same impact. Because they'll be asking for that and we'll maybe say not this year. Okay. Thank you, Lois.
Thank you.
So just on that, so Lois, I assume you'll probably create an outline for us of what you think should be in there and then come back to the committee
Yes.
for help in filling it in, right?
Yes, that would be great. Yes, why don't I'll work on that. I'll get copies of the warrant and I will definitely get back to the committee on that. That can go on the agenda for the 17th. I'll have something for us to talk about then if you want to start that early.
So why don't we have Lois, you're in charge, and we'll have a small subcommittee of myself, Parashar, and Christine.
Perfect. It's great.
Okay.
And Amrit too, if he wants to help out.
There'll be plenty of opportunity.
Okay.
But
Thank you,
we'll
Amrit.
help direct sort of what kind of information. Put in. Okay.
And when did you say the vote would be?
the vote on the middle school building, I have it down for November 21st,
Okay, thanks.
which is, I think it's a Monday.
And how soon after that do we need to have the report done?
December 8th,
December 8th?
couple weeks.
Okay, that's doable.
Town warrant, our report is due to the town on December 8th.
Right.
So they can, publish it, send it, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, November, excuse me. Yes, November 21st is the Monday before Thanksgiving.
I have a question for Matt.
Got this one first.
Okay.
I have 2 December meetings in my calendar. I don't see them here. December 22nd? No?
No.
Okay.
And
December
that
12th.
that might be a relic from when the town meeting was supposed to be in December or
Okay.
in early
All right.
January.
Okay.
Do you see a December 12th meeting on your calendar?
Yes, Monday, capital planning forum number
Exactly.
3.
That
That's
one I'm
not-
just adding.
That's not our meeting.
And we don't have a,
Well,
and
it
we
is
don't
also
have a
joint
meeting
meeting.
on the 8th.
That's a
No,
select.
no, that's not our meeting. That's not our meeting. The 12th is a meeting between the select board and the school committee, not us. We only meet, we're one of the 3 meetings.
Okay.
Okay, that's not our meeting.
We're not part of that meeting?
The 12th, on December 12th, there is a meeting on December 12th. It is not a FinCom meeting.
It's a joint meeting with all 3 boards, I think, is the way we structured the
I
process.
thought so too.
Yeah, I think
Last
it's all
one?
3 of us.
Last
Is
one,
it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we
I don't
did the-
remember that.
Yeah, when we did that, it was with all 3.
Darn.
Is that
With
right?
all 3.
Okay,
It
all right.
is.
That's, yeah, I don't remember that. Okay,
And the
okay,
one I'm
sorry.
looking
Sorry.
at does not have our regular meeting.
I thought we just did it.
Peggy, a request for Peggy.
Except we have no money.
Bring your own.
Maybe we can decide on when we meet on whatever date it is here, we meet earlier, if we actually need the one on the 12th. I don't know. Okay.
Peggy, a quick request for somebody in the room, or maybe Chris could do this if possible. Could somebody just send a final list of when we're meeting? I'm now completely confused about December, so.
Yeah, that should be in your packet, Amherst. Unfortunately, the packets come out with millions of pages from Parashar, and then my pages are at the very end.
No, unfortunately, the packet has on the first page, November 3rd, 10th, and 17th, and I've struck out 3rd and 10th, and I've left 17th. So if
Okay.
it's too much of a problem, if somebody could just send one list to all of us.
Bob-
and say, the meeting will be these days, that would be good.
Bob will send that updated schedule out to everybody, thanks.
I'm happy to do that, but don't strike out November 10th.
What did, Bob, what did you say?
Everybody just struck it out.
No,
Haven't stricken it yet.
We'll have to stop talking.
12th is a Monday and it's.
November 3rd, is still a question mark.
No, wait.
I thought
didn't
you struck that, but November 10th,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we struck it, we
Sorry.
struck it. Yeah.
It's out. It's not a question mark. We are striking November 3rd.
November
And
3rd is what?
my last question to you is, this is the only meeting we have in December,
Well, we have our regular meeting in December.
which is when?
That would be,
no, you don't.
Not on
We
here.
don't
Now you
have
know
a-
why I asked the question.
I have a meeting on the 12th. I have on the 15th of December. Did we have a meeting?
I have 22nd.
our regular meeting.
Okay.
Third,
Fourth.
fourth. Well, I don't think we want one on the 22nd.
No.
That's why I had it in my book.
Do we want to put that on, well, we have one on the 12th, Monday, so why don't we,
Hold on. Monday is not, it's only a
Monday's the capital
joint
forum.
hearing or joint meeting with the 3 committees. It's not our
It's not a meeting for
meeting
FinCom.
technically.
Okay.
So we can
So
ask.
are we,
no,
Why don't
are we
we have?
meeting on December 15th?
15th?
Yeah.
No, we don't want one on the 8th.
Let's
The
do the,
15th
okay.
I can't do.
We'll have it
So
perfect.
can I make a suggestion?
Yes,
What?
The calendar that's in our packet that was sent today
yep,
was constructed after the select board set up the town meeting calendars and everything.
that's right,
I think Peg, you and Bob went through and decided what made sense
yep.
at the time. The only change is we've deleted November 3rd. We didn't include those meetings in late December because we still have time on the 26th, et cetera, to make decisions around the annual town meeting. So I don't think we need to meet at the end of December, which is why there's no meeting there.
Okay, which is
Wonderful.
great.
Thank you.
I love the idea that
Exactly.
there's no
So
meeting.
let's not just on the fly add meetings without.
No, I'm fine. No, great, thank you. Woo-hoo. I just
The
want
only
to
change,
read that.
Amrith, again, the calendar that went out today,
Yep.
the only change is November 3rd, we're not meeting.
Understood. Page 41, I made one change. Thank you.
Okay.
So
The question that I have is, when will if it closes tomorrow?
did you get it?
If articles have to be
get
in
the
tomorrow, when are they made public? When will we be able to see them? Matt?
Wow.
It's on the calendar.
Oh, it is? It's not on the vote on special town meeting articles. Our vote is November 21st.
But we don't, that we have a meeting there,
When will
guideline.
we see the articles that are going to be at special town meeting? When can we get a hold of the contents of special town meeting?
I mean, I think informally, you'll be able to get them in a few days,
Where?
probably on the town website. But I mean, there's the legal review that's going to go on tomorrow afternoon after the select board meets, and we'll order the articles for the warrant after it closes at 12:30. And then I think it's 3 o'clock or something, the meeting with town council. And then, there's draft language for the articles already. So it's just a matter of assembling that. And then they're going to go send it to the printers. But in the meantime, I believe that file should be available on the town website as the PDF.
And Matt, the select board is
And it will
voting
then
on the
be mailed to
21st,
every
is that right?
household. What?
The select board is voting on November 21st on the special town meeting articles?
That we're going to take positions. Yeah.
Okay, so you'd definitely have them public by then.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Of the 21st of November?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So
they should be
it's-
public next week.
Yeah, they'll be
I'm
public
saying,
next
you
week.
know, I
It's
mean,
not going to be a big secret.
Where are they made public? Can I go to the town website and find them?
Well, again, if you want to go on the town website right now on our meeting packet, you'll see the draft language for the warrant articles that have been submitted to date. Our packet that's available for
And those include?
tomorrow's meeting.
Those in,
So that has the fossil fuel one. It has the the real estate tax and the building permit surcharge, revotes with some true ups. And then it has the language for the middle school, and it has the 2 articles for the CPC. So that's
Okay.
all we know about right now.
so it's those last 3 that really have a financial implication that we actually have to review?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Okay, the others we do not.
right.
I will hunt it down and get it to everybody.
Okay, and that's draft language right now, but
Yeah.
it'll be done
Right.
tomorrow. I mean, now, the thing is, they're still not actually, I should say, the warrant may take a little bit longer than that because, there's the explanation boxes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so you have to write those statements up. So it may take a little longer than that.
Those are helpful most of the time.
They are usually helpful, and I'm trying to see where the calendar is.
Okay,
Here we go.
ASAP.
Send the warrant to the printer is November 2nd. So
Oh.
it'll be by then. Okay?
Right around the corner.
Yes, next Wednesday.
Okay.
Okay, I am
you.
going to move to item number 5, other topics. Been very, very patient.
Zoom, I gotta get in front of this.
Thank you for coming, Rick.
No problem. I'll be brief. I have been, having been on the FinCom many years ago, I don't know that I've heard this length of discussion on something, but
You're going to have to introduce yourself for the
I'm
record.
sorry. Rick Laughlin, I am the chair of the 2025 Finance Committee. And as I said, I sat on this particular committee back in the 80s and
I don't remember any deliberation as long as that one, but this is obviously a very important.
What does that say
issue.
about Peggy's leadership? Is that a comment on her
Well, well, because they didn't build any schools in the 80s, we have to do
Yeah, we
it
didn't-
now.
We had plenty of schools. So I'll be brief. The select board created the 2025 committee earlier this year and created an executive committee where there's up to 15 people. I think we currently have 11 people with 9 subcommittees, one of which is mine as the finance chair. I'm in a budget process with 8 other subcommittees, ranging from events and invitations to community participation, et cetera. And I've gotten several budgets in, but it's very early in the process, and it's like pulling teeth to try to get people to figure out what arts and literature type things they're going to concoct for 2025. So it's a moving target, but I do have some of the budgets in. And I think the reason I spoke to Peggy is I wanted to get on your radar screen, not for the special town meeting, definitely. We would stay away from that. But for the annual town meeting, we will have a warrant article to establish some funding for the committee. And we'll probably come back for the following 2 town meetings for additional funding, which at this point, we do not have any hard numbers until we get budgets. And as I said, it's a moving target. But we will have a warrant article next year. I gave Peggy a number the other day, which we were thinking we might be in the $300,000 range for a warrant article to get some funding for things that start to happen, in 2023. So with that, we've had a long meeting. I don't think there's much more I can add other than get on your radar screen that the 2025 committee is out there. It's active. It's going to be more active. And, there's a lot of planning and participation. We're led by Henry Dane, the member of the select board. We meet every week, which has gotten a little difficult for some people. But he's a taskmaster, and I think we've made a lot of progress, but we have a lot of work still to do. So we would certainly look for your support for an event such as this in 2025. Any questions, thoughts? Oh, we have a public hearing. With all the dates you've been kicking around, you got me confused. November 3rd, next Thursday, I think it is. We have a public hearing.
Oh,
at
good,
the
we just
library.
canceled our meeting, so we can all attend your meeting.
Well, it's November 3rd at 7 o'clock, public hearing at the good one, the new room over at the library. So, any questions, thoughts?
Yes, can you tell me what you're celebrating in 2025?
The Battle of Concord and Lexington, the 250th
Thank you.
anniversary.
I should know that.
Are there any other revenue sources besides tax funding on the horizon?
We will, that's certainly been discussed. We're certainly going to go out for donations, et cetera. I mean, one of the committees which has come back with a significant number is some kind of permanent memorial. In order to do that, we've had some discussions with Kerry about a specific piece of property owned by the town, but that would require some fundraising if we go in that direction. We definitely will be doing some fundraising, so it won't be a total town burden. But I would say significant portion will be town funds.
Maybe we
as
could
it
just
was
put
in
it on the middle school
1975.
grounds somewhere.
So how is
We'll put it on the old Peabody property.
1975, how was it approached in terms of coming to the town to ask for money? Did they come to the finance committee? Did they, was it an article?
In 1975,
Town meeting or something?
I was involved, but I was rather young then. I was involved in the parade, but I do not remember the complete process, whether they came to the finance committee. They spent over the period, I think they spent $130,000 or $40,000 50 years ago for the event. So, and I think it was mostly appropriated town funds was my recollection. I think it's in the report somewhere there.
Okay.
But I don't remember if they went to the FinCom, but I believe that it was town appropriated money.
So it might be something that you'd work with the town manager?
Yeah.
Gotcha, okay. And it would be
She
part of that
suggested-
budget?
Yeah, she suggested that Because what started me to possibly come here, Henry got very nervous when he saw the goals coming out and said, what are we going, we're not planning. So Henry and I talked to Carrie and she said, no, you'll be a separate warrant article in the 23 town meeting. So,
Okay, in the 2023 town meeting?
yes, we'll have
The
an
upcoming
article.
one next year, okay.
We're kind of running right now, we're not spending a lot of money, but we're running on air.
Do you have a
We have-
ballpark?
Of total?
Uh-huh.
I prefer not to even mention it since we're so preliminary and some of the budget's not in. But I would say over the next 2 or 3 months, by the time we go to the annual town meeting, I think we'll have for the hearings, et cetera, we should have a pretty good idea of the total funding over a 3-year period.
Over a 3-year period?
We should. If some of these subcommittees can
Get their acts together.
Get all their numbers together.
Well, you're certainly very wise to get on the radar screen sooner rather than later.
Rick?
Yes.
Hey, Brian Taylor.
Hi, Brian.
Hey, quick question about this. So the last time there was a celebration was in the 70s. Did I hear you say that right?
1975. There was one.
200th,
There was one in 2000, I think, also, but not to the magnitude of the 1975 celebration where President Ford showed up and it was a massive parade. So that was the last really big celebration of this magnitude.
Okay, and that was sort of to my question. Like, historically back at that point in time, you had there was a large inflow of people coming into the town that could potentially spend money and offset the cost of this, correct?
People came into the town and certainly spent money. I don't know that how it offset
It
costs.
didn't offset.
State might have gotten some money.
Yeah, the sales taxes might have gone up.
They certainly
Yeah.
spent money, but I don't know that it helped defray any of the costs that the town was going to pay for.
I wonder if the more recent celebrations wouldn't be at least relevant to look at, even though they were smaller.
Yeah, I mean, the 2000, I didn't look up 2000 because 1975 was readily available. I don't recollect the 2000 costs, but they probably exist somewhere, so we could take a look at those.
And people who were involved in those, I know are still living in town, so there'd be some institutional memory available to you.
Yes.
Like Henry.
Rick Freeze was very involved.
I find it interesting that Carrie has suggested you have your own warrant article and rather than funding it under her capital plan. Tier one. I mean, $300,000 is something she would, or seems to me, it could be found in the budget. But coming to town meeting also is a nice opportunity for you to.
I think
present it.
Henry and Carrie, I think the town meeting approach was, because it needs to get out to the town, it needs to be, it shouldn't be buried in a town budget somewhere. It should be an article where people would have questions, and by then we'd hopefully have a lot more planning done that could be brought to the town meeting. So I think that was the general logic. But
Okay,
it's
well,
still
I'm not
fluid.
going to argue with
That
the
could
Board of
change.
Selectmen.
That
I
could
mean, the
change.
Select Board. Okay, any questions, further questions? Thank you very much for coming.
Okay,
And
thank
Good
you.
luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
and thank you
Well,
for.
We got some work to do. We'll be back.
Thank you for listening to our discussion over the middle school.
Well, it will be an interesting hearing. Good luck.
It will,
Delaying
okay,
the
I don't think we,
celebration Is not optional, is it?
what?
Delaying the celebration fees is not optional? That
Yeah,
would work.
I believe
Pay
we
for it
did.
afterwards. You can pay after.
Maybe they should sell
Let me-
tickets.
I'll check, see which one I moved in my calendar.
Last year's Ag Day, Henry Kane did have a booth. And, if you donated money, you
That's
got
correct.
a T-shirt. So.
With his
anyway.
picture on.
Huh? I have a T-shirt, but it's a long story how it, and I won't bother you with it. I have a T-shirt for 2025. Because I thought somebody else.
10,
was doing
17,
it.
and 21st potentially.
Okay, we do not, is it true we have no minutes?
We do, we have
Oh,
minutes.
We do.
We do have minutes.
We have two sets of minutes.
We had, I know.
You didn't, nobody read them?
I didn't get a chance.
I did not read
can
them.
abstain.
I'm sorry, I
but-
don't know.
Provided comments on.
But don't look at the
I didn't read the finished version.
Finish version.
Okay.
No, I didn't.
Okay,
Okay.
let's do the minutes at our next meeting. And I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Second.
Yay.